In the war-torn heart of Thebes, Antigone, a daughter of tragedy, defies a king's cruel edict to bury her brother, choosing divine duty over mortal law. Her courageous stand against Creon's power ignites a chain of heartbreak, entombment, betrayal, and loss, yet her unyielding loyalty shines as a beacon in a fractured city. What price would you pay to honor love and duty? And how far does defiance reach in a world where gods and kings collide? The Wooden Sentinel. Origins of the Trojan Horse's silent deceptioners. You settle into the dim glow of evening. Imagine yourself wandering the dusty plains outside the ancient city of Troy, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of salt from the nearby Aegean Sea and the faint smoke of distant campfires. This is the world of Greek mythology, not the realm of gods thundering from Olympus, but the quieter, more persistent undercurrents of human ingenuity and endurance that shaped epic. Tales! The Trojan Horse, that iconic symbol of deception, didn't emerge from divine whimsy alone. It was born from the grinding realities of a decade-long siege, where survival hinged on the mundane details of strategy, craftsmanship, and the subtle art of waiting. Picture the Trojan War not as a clash of heroes in gleaming armor, but as a protracted stalemate that tested the limits of ordinary men. By the 9th year, the Greek forces, led by figures like Agamemnon and Odysseus, had encamped on the shores, their tents weathered by relentless winds and their supplies dwindling from raids on nearby villages. You can almost feel the exhaustion. In their bones, the daily routines of sharpening bronze swords, mending sails torn by storms, and foraging for olives and barley to stave off hunger. These weren't invincible warriors, they were farmers, fishermen, and traders pulled from their homes in Mycenae, Sparta, and Ithaca, bound by oaths and the promise of glory. That grew dimmer with each passing season. The idea of the horse, as whispered in the myths preserved by Homer in the Iliad and Odyssey, stemmed from Odysseus's cunning mind. But let's linger on the historical echoes that make this tale resonate. Archaeological digs at Thessalic, the site believed to be ancient Troy, reveal layers of walls rebuilt after earthquakes and fires, suggesting a city resilient yet vulnerable to prolonged blockades. The Greeks, drawing from their seafaring heritage, understood the power of illusion in warfare. Odysseus, often depicted as the wily king of Ithaca, embodied this, a man who survived not through brute strength like Achilles, but through patience and observation. You might envision him pacing the beach at night, studying the stars for omens, while his comrades grumbled over meager rations of dried fish and watered wine. The construction of the horse itself was a feat of unremarkable labor amplified by its secrecy. Hephaestus, a lesser-known craftsman from the island of Phocis, was tasked with building it under Athena's subtle guidance, also the myths claim. But strip away the goddess's influence and you're left with the practicalities: sourcing timber from the nearby Ida Mountains, where pines grew tall and straight, felled by axes that echoed through the valleys. The workers, shielded from Trojan scouts by makeshift barriers of shields and cloaks, hammered and sawed through the nights, their hands blistered from ropes and splinters. The horse wasn't a grand monument, it was oversized, perhaps 30 feet tall, hollowed out to conceal a select group of warriors, men like Menelaus, Diomedes, and Neoptolemus, who volunteered for the cramped, airless confines, enduring the stink of sweat and fear for hours on end. In this narrative of deception, consider the Trojan side, where daily life persisted amid the siege. Priests like Glaucon warned of Greek tricks, their voices lost in the wind as they performed rituals at altars stained with the blood of sacrificed bulls. The city's inhabitants, from weavers spinning wool in dimly lit homes to guards patrolling the Scaean gates, clung to routines that masked their growing despair. King Priam, aged and weary, consulted oracles in temples dedicated to Apollo, seeking signs in the flight of birds or the entrails of beasts. Yet, the horse's arrival posed a riddle wrapped in reverence, a gift to Poseidon, god of horses and seas, left on the beach as the Greeks feigned retreat, their ships vanishing over the horizon. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the plains. You wonder, what compelled the Trojans to drag this colossal wooden beast through their gates, ignoring the faint creaks from within? Was it hubris, divine madness, or simply the exhaustion of war that blinded them to the deception lurking in its belly. As you linger in the twilight haze of ancient Troy, the city's towering walls loom before you, their limestone blocks weathered by years of siege and sea winds. The Trojan Horse stands abandoned on the beach, a hulking silhouette against the fading light, its wooden flanks gleaming faintly with olive oil polish applied by Greek hands to mimic reverence. The Greeks' camp lies empty, their ships mere specks on the horizon, a calculated illusion of retreat. Inside Troy, the air buzzes with cautious hope, but beneath it, a current of unease ripples through the crowded streets. You can almost hear the murmurs of the Trojans' merchants, potters, mothers cradling infants as they gather near the Scaean gates, debating the strange offering left behind. The Trojans' daily lives, though overshadowed by war, were anchored in routine. Women ground barley into coarse flour, their hands moving rhythmically at stone querns, while children played with clay figurines in the shadow of temples. Guards, their bronze helmets heavy with sweat, scanned the plains for signs of Greek treachery, their eyes strained from sleepless nights. King Priam, seated in his Megaron with its frescoed walls depicting Apollo's lyre, listened to advisors like Antenna who urged caution and Paris, whose reckless love for Helen had sparked this endless war. The horse, they speculated, might be a votive offering to appease Poseidon, a god both sides revered. Yet the priest Laocoon, his voice hoarse from shouting warnings, insisted it was a trap. Hurling a spear into the horse's side, where it thudded dully against the hollow interior, you can imagine the crowd's uneasy silence, broken only by the cries of gulls overhead. Meanwhile, the Greek warriors hidden inside perhaps 30 men, chosen for their nerve, endured their own trial. Cramped shoulder to shoulder in the horse's belly, they breathed shallowly in the stifling dark, their armor clinking softly with every shift. Odysseus, ever the strategist, lightly whispered commands to stay silent, their survival hinging on discipline. The air grew thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and resin-soaked wood, and the men, farmers and sailors turned soldiers, fought the urge to cough a shift. Outside, a Trojan scout, Sinon, played his part in the deception left behind to spin a tale of betrayal. The Greeks, he claimed, had abandoned him and built the horse to appease Poseidon for a safe voyage home. His words, rehearsed under Odysseus's tutelage, were laced with just enough desperation to ring true. Archaeological evidence from Hesalic suggests Troy's walls, though formidable, had vulnerabilities gates widened for trade could admit. A structure like the horse, but only with effort. The Trojans, exhausted by rationed meals of lentils and dried fish, saw the Greek withdrawal as a chance to reclaim normalcy. Festivals to Apollo, complete with lyre music and roasted goat, were planned to celebrate the war's end. Yet, divine omens clouded their joy. 2 serpents, said to be sent by Athena, strangled Laocoon and his sons, a sign many interpreted as punishment for doubting the horse's sanctity. You can picture the crowd's awe, their fear of offending, the gods outweighing their skepticism as they yoked oxen to drag the horse through the gates, its wheels creaking over the stone ramp. As night falls, the horse sits ominously in Troy's central square, surrounded by flickering torches and drunken revelry. The Greeks inside wait, their muscles aching, their fates uncertain. What would it take for the Trojans to uncover the ruse before the trap is sprung, and why did their gods, so often invoked, remain silent? As you stand in the heart of Troy under a starless sky, the city hums with the false peace of celebration. The Trojan horse, now a looming centerpiece in the agora, is ringed by flickering oil lamps and garlands of wild thyme, offerings to the gods who seem to have delivered victory. The Trojans, weary from a decade of rationed meals and constant vigilance, let their guard slip, their voices rising in song as wine flows from clay amphorae. You can almost taste the sharp tang of the drink, hear the laughter of children weaving. Through the crowd, unaware of the peril nestled within the wooden beast, the air carries the scent of roasted barley and sacrifice, a fleeting return to the rhythms of life before the war. Inside the horse, the Greek warriors endure their final hours of confinement, their breaths shallow in the suffocating dark. Odysseus, his mind sharp despite the ache in his limbs, likely counted the moments. listening to the fading revelry outside. The men farmers from Thessaly, shepherds from Crete, and sailors from Ithaca clutched their bronze daggers, their courage tempered by the fear of discovery. The myths, as told by Homer, credit Athena with guiding their deception, but the reality was more human, meticulous planning, the gamble of Sinon's lies, and the Trojans' exhaustion after years of siege. Excavations at Thessalic revealed Troy's granaries were nearly empty by this point, the city's survival hanging by a thread of trade with nearby allies. The Trojans' decision to accept the horse wasn't just hubris. It was the desperation of a people craving an end to scarcity. As midnight passed, the city grew quiet, save for the snores of drunken guards and the distant bark of dogs. Sinon, the Greek scout left behind, crept through the shadows to light a signal fire on a nearby hill, alerting the Greek fleet hiding at Tenedo. The ships, their oars muffled, glided back to shore. Inside the horse, Odysseus gave the signal, and the warriors emerged, stiff and silent, descending a rope ladder into the heart of Troy. You can imagine the soft clink of their armor, the thud of boots on cobblestone as they fanned out to open the city gates. The Greek army poured in, their torches casting jagged shadows on the walls. The Trojans, roused from sleep, scrambled for weapons, but it was too late. Swords clashed, and flames began to lick at the thatched roofs of homes. By dawn, Troy burned. The myths speak of divine wrath, but the reality was grimly human. Men, like Menelaus, reclaimed Helen, while others looted gold and grain. Priam fell at Zeus's altar, his blood staining the sacred stones. The horse, once a symbol of hope, stood sentinel over a city reduced to ash. Archaeological layers at Thessalic confirmed the destruction, with charred beams and shattered pottery marking a violent end. Yet, the story's legacy lies not in the fire, but in its quiet lessons. Cunning outlasts strength, and trust, when misplaced, can undo empires. Reflecting on this, you might wonder how often history repeats such deceptions, where the ordinary acts building, waiting, believing shape the fall of civilizations. The Trojan horse endures as a warning, not of gods, but of human nature's fragile balance between hope and hubris. What other silent sentinels, unnoticed in our own time, might carry the seeds of chaos? Hephaestus's anvil, forging weapons for gods. Amid mortal shadows, imagine yourself standing on the rocky slopes of Mount Olympus, where the air is thin and smells faintly of charred metal and pine. Below, the mortal world stretches out in patches of olive groves and dusty villages, but here in the divine forge of Hephaestus, the clang of hammer on anvil echoes like a heartbeat. Greek mythology paints Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship, as a figure both revered and overlooked, his limp and soot-streaked face setting him apart from the radiant gods of Olympus. Yet, his forge was the backbone of divine power, crafting weapons that shaped the fates of gods and mortals alike. This is not a tale of glittering battles, but of the quiet, relentless labor that armed the heavens and stirred mortal destinies. Hephaestus's workshop, tucked into the volcanic crags, was no celestial palace. Picture a cavern lit by the orange glow of molten bronze, its walls blackened by centuries of smoke. Tools, hammers, tongs, bellows lay scattered across stone benches worn smooth by use. The myths, preserved in Hesiod's Theogony and Homer's Iliad describe Hephaestus crafting Zeus's thunderbolts, Athena's spear, and Achilles' shield, each piece imbued with divine purpose. But consider the mundane reality, sourcing ore from the mines of Lemnos, where Hephaestus was said to have landed after being cast from Olympus. Miners, mortal men with calloused hands, dug copper and tin from the earth, their lives bound to the rhythm of pickaxes and flickering lamps. These metals, carried by traders across the Aegean, reached the gods' forge through human sweat. Hephaestus himself was a figure of resilience. Born lame, mocked by Hera and Zeus, he toiled in isolation, his only companions the Cyclops, brute, craftsmen who stoked the fires. You can envision him at the anvil, his broad shoulders hunched, sweat mingling with ash as he shaped molten bronze with precision. Each strike was deliberate, each weapon a balance of form and function. The shield of Achilles, described in intricate detail in the *Gilead*, bore scenes of mortal life ploughing fields, dancing villagers etched with tools not unlike those found in Bronze Age ruins. At Knossos, these artifacts suggest a world where craftsmanship was survival, where a well-forged blade meant protection from raiders or beasts. The gods' demands were endless. Athena sought a spear to rival Ares's, Apollo a bow to strike from afar. Hephaestus, despite his divine status, worked like a mortal artisan, measuring, heating, cooling, and polishing. His forge was a place of transformation where raw earth became tools of power, yet it tethered him to the mortal world. On Lemnos, his cult thrived among smiths and potters, ordinary people who saw their own labor mirrored in his. They offered him wine and barley cakes at clay altars, their prayers rising with the smoke of their own small forges. These mortals, whose names are lost to history, shaped the divine narrative through their offerings and toil. As you linger in the heat of the forge, watching sparks rise like stars, you wonder, what drove Hephaestus to craft for gods who scorned him, and how did his creations ripple into the mortal world, arming heroes and sparking wars? The forge of Hephaestus glows hotter now, its air thick with the tang of molten iron and the faint sulfur of volcanic stone. You stand at the threshold of his cavern, where the rhythmic clang of his hammer feels like the pulse of creation itself. Beyond the myths, Hephaestus's work was not just divine artistry, but a bridge between Olympus and the mortal world, where his creation swords, shields, and scepters altered the course of human lives. The gods might have commissioned his labor, but it was mortals who bore the consequences, their fates entwined with the weapons forged in this smoky crucible. Consider the crafting of Achilles' shield, a masterpiece described in Homer's *Gilead* as a microcosm of life, fields, cities, and starry skies etched into bronze. This wasn't mere decoration, but a reflection of the Bronze Age world, where artisans in Mycenae and Pylos hammered out similar designs on ceremonial armor. Hephaestus's process was grueling melting copper and tin, pouring the alloy into clay molds, then polishing until the surface gleamed like the sun. You can picture him, his lame leg braced against a stone, working alongside the Cyclops, whose bellows roared like a storm. The forge's heat would have been unbearable. Yet Hephaestus endured, driven by a craftsman's pride rather than divine glory. His tools, not unlike those found in archaeological digs at Thera, were simple chisels, anvils, and leather aprons stained with sweat and soot. The mortals of Lemnos, Hephaestus's sacred island, revered him not as a distant god but as a patron of their own labor. Smiths in mud brick workshops, their hands scarred from burns, hammered bronze into plowshares and daggers, their lives mirroring his endless toil. They told stories of his fall from Olympus, cast out by Hera for his imperfection, and his return, proving his worth through skill. These tales, passed down in marketplaces over bowls of lentil stew, gave meaning to their own struggles. Excavations on Lemnos reveal small sanctuaries with offerings clay figurines, bronze pins left by artisans who saw Hephaestus as one of their own, a god who understood the weight of a hammer and the sting of failure. Yet, his creations carried a darker edge. The weapons he forged Zeus's thunderbolts, Ares' spear-empowered divine rivalries that spilled into mortal wars. The Trojan War, fueled by Helen's abduction, saw Hephaestus' handiwork in the hands of Achilles and Hector, their clashes echoing the gods' own feuds. Mortals paid the price, villages burned, fields trampled, families torn apart. On Lemnos, potters and weavers whispered of the moral cost, wondering if their patrons' gifts to the gods were curses in disguise. Hephaestus, caught between divine demands and mortal suffering, worked on, his anvil a constant amid the chaos. As you watch him shape a glowing spearhead, sparks scattering like fireflies, you sense the tension in his craft. Each weapon was a marvel, but also a seed of destruction, its purpose shaped by those who wielded it. What did Hephaestus feel, forging tools that brought both glory and ruin? And how did his silent labor shape the fragile balance between gods and men? The forge of Hephaestus lies quiet now, its fires banked to a dull red glow, the air heavy with the scent of cooling metal. You stand among the shadows of his cavern, where the tools of creation tongues, hammers, and clay crucibles rest. Silently, their work done, the myths cast Hephaestus as a god, but his story is one of human persistence, a craftsman whose labor armed the heavens and altered the mortal world. His creations, from Athena's unyielding spear to the intricate shield of Achilles, were more than divine artifacts. They were catalysts that tipped the scales of history, their consequences rippling through time. The final forging of Achilles' shield, as told in the *Iliad*, was a triumph of skill. Hephaestus etched it with scenes of mortal life harvests, weddings, and starry skies capturing the beauty and fragility of the world below. Archaeological finds from Mycenaean graves, like bronze shields inlaid with gold, echo this artistry, suggesting a culture where such work was revered. Yet, each piece Hephaestus crafted carried a dual legacy. His weapons empowered heroes, but also fueled destruction. Achilles' shield protected him in Troy, but it couldn't save him from Paris' arrow, guided by Apollo. The thunderbolts forged for Zeus upheld divine order, but crushed mortal rebels like Prometheus. You can imagine Hephaestus at his anvil, his face lit by the forge's glow, aware of the chaos his creations could unleash, yet bound to his task by duty. On Lemnos, mortals honored him with quiet rituals, pouring wine over stone altars and offering bronze tools worn smooth by use. These were not the grand sacrifices of kings, but the humble gifts of smiths and potters, whose lives mirrored his own. They understood the weight of creation, the way a single blade could protect a village or raise it. Excavations on Lemnos reveal workshops with anvils and slag heaps, evidence of a craft that sustained communities through trade and defense. Hephaestus' cult gave these artisans a sense of purpose, their labor sanctified by a god who toiled as they did, despite divine scorn. The climax of Hephaestus' story lies not in a single event, but in the enduring impact of his work. His weapons shaped the Trojan War's outcome, enabling the Greek victory but leaving Troy's ruins as a testament to war's cost. His craft elevated mortal heroes, yet it also bound them to divine whims, their triumphs and tragedies orchestrated by Olympian rivalries. Hephaestus, the outcast god, proved his worth through creation, but his legacy is bittersweet, a reminder that skill, without wisdom, can amplify destruction. As you step away from the forge, the embers fading, reflect on Hephaestus' quiet resilience. His story speaks to the unsung artisans of history, whose labor, whether forging a sword or shaping a pot, underpins civilization. Today, we see echoes of his craft in the tools and technologies that define our world, each carrying the potential for creation or chaos. What lessons linger in the sparks of Hephaestus' anvil? And how do we wield the tools we inherit without igniting our own Trojan fires? Pandora's quiet unleashing, the box of moral order's fragile balancer. Picture yourself in a quiet corner of ancient Greece, where the hills bloom with wild thyme and the air carries the faint bleating of goats. This is not the realm of gods hurling thunderbolts, but a world of mortals tending olive groves and weaving linen under the weight of divine decisions. The myth of Pandora, as told by Hesiod in works and Day's centers on a woman crafted from clay, whose curiosity unleashed chaos upon humanity. Yet, beneath the drama lies a subtler story of moral order, human resilience, and the everyday choices that ripple through time. Pandora's tale is less about a single act and more about the fragile balance of existence, shaped by the mundane routines of those who lived in her shadow. Pandora, molded by Hephaestus under Zeus's command, was no ordinary figure. The gods endowed her with beauty, cunning, and a jar often misnamed, a box sealed with secrets, sent to Earth as a gift to Prometheus' less cautious brother. She arrived in a world already strained by divine mortal tensions. Prometheus' theft of fire had angered Zeus, prompting a punishment that would test humanity's endurance. You can imagine Pandora stepping into a village of mud brick homes, where women ground barley with stone pestles and men sharpened bronze tools by firelight. These were not heroes but farmers and weavers, their lives dictated by the rhythms of planting and harvest, their prayers offered to Hestia for warmth. and Demeter for fertile fields. Archaeological finds from sites like Mycenae reveal a Bronze Age Greece where daily survival demanded cooperation. Families stored grain in clay pithoi, not unlike the jar Pandora carried, their contents guarded against pests and drought. Pandora's jar, described by Hesiod, held evils like disease and toil, but also hope, a detail that lingers in the myth's ambiguity. Was it a divine trap or a misunderstood vessel? The villagers who welcomed Pandora, unaware of her purpose, might have seen her as a bride bringing a dowry, a common practice reflected in pottery depicting marriage processions. Her presence, though, stirred unease. Her beauty was too perfect, her voice too melodic, as if Athena and Aphrodite had sculpted her to dazzle and deceive. Pandora's life with Prometheus was ordinary in its rhythms. She spun wool, baked flatbread, and joined the women at the village well, their chatter blending with the splash of clay jars. Yet, the jar, placed in a corner of their home, was a constant presence, its lid sealed gleaming faintly in the lamplight. The myths don't say how long she resisted its pull, but you can picture her pausing during chores, her fingers brushing its cool surface, curiosity gnawing at her. The villagers, too, whispered about it, their lives already burdened by failed crops and sudden fevers, unaware that Pandora's act would amplify their struggles. As you stand in this ancient village, watching Pandora weave under the shade of an olive tree, you sense the weight of her choice approaching. What drove her to lift the jar's lid? And how could a single act, born of curiosity, unravel the delicate balance of a world already teetering on the edge? The village hums with the quiet cadence of daily life as you linger near Pandora's home, its mud brick walls warmed by the midday sun. The scent of baking bread mingles with the tang of olive oil, and children chase each other through dusty lanes, their laughter a fleeting reprieve from the toil that defines this Bronze Age world. Pandora, now a fixture among the villagers, moves with grace, her hands deftly spinning wool into thread, her presence both familiar and unsettling. The jar, that fateful gift from Zeus, sits in the shadowed corner of her home, its clay surface unadorned but heavy with unspoken purpose. You can feel the tension it casts, like a stone dropped into still water, its ripples touching every life around it. Hesiod's asterisk works and Day's asterisk frames Pandora's act as a divine punishment, a consequence of Prometheus's defiance. But let's dwell on the human side of this myth. The villagers, scraping by on barley porridge and dried figs, lived in a world where survival hinged on vigilance, checking granaries for mold, repairing nets torn by storms, or offering clay figurines to appease Demeter. Excavations at sites like Turns reveal storage jars similar to Pandora's, used to hold grain or oil, their seals broken only with care. Pandora's jar, though, was no ordinary vessel. Its lead stopper, etched perhaps with divine symbols, was a barrier between order and chaos, its contents a mystery even to her. You can imagine Prometheus, a man of simple trust, dismissing her questions about it, his focus on mending a plough or bartering for goats. The myth suggests Pandora's curiosity was a flaw, a feminine weakness crafted by the gods. But consider her as a woman navigating a world of rigid roles. She joined the women at the village spring, their chatter about harvests and omens filling the air as they filled their jars. These women, whose names are lost to history, were the backbone of their communities, kneading dough, weaving cloaks, and tending to fevers with herbs. Pandora, though divine in origin, shared their burdens, her hands calloused from labor. Yet, her jar set her apart, its presence a daily temptation. Was it curiosity alone, or the weight of isolation in a village that revered yet feared her? The myths don't say, but you can picture her pausing at night, the village asleep, her fingers tracing the jar's rim, drawn by a need to understand her place in this divine scheme. The villagers, too, felt the jar's shadow. Whispers spread of strange omens, a crow circling the village, a sudden bite on wheat fields interpreted by priests as signs of divine displeasure. These omens, rooted in the real anxieties of Bronze Age life, reflected a world where every storm or failed crop felt like a judgment. Pandora, caught between mortal routines and divine purpose, stood at a crossroads. Her act, when it came, would not be a solitary one but a spark in a world already fragile. Its people braced for hardship yet unaware of the scale of what loomed daughters. You watch Pandora pause by the jar, its seal glinting in the lamplight. You wonder, was her choice inevitable, a trap set by the gods? Or did the weight of human curiosity, shared by all who lived in her shadow, make the jar's opening a collective fate? Night has fallen over the village, and you stand in the quiet of Pandora's home, where the flicker of an oil lamp casts long shadows across the clay floor. The jar, that enigmatic vessel, looms larger now, its presence a silent challenge to the rhythms of life spinning, grinding, praying that hold this fragile community together. The myth of Pandora, as Hesiod tells it, reaches its climax with her lifting the lid, unleashing evils that would haunt humanity, disease, toil, and strife. Yet, the story's heart lies not in divine wrath but in the human aftermath, the resilience of ordinary people navigating a world reshaped by one act, and the faint glimmer of hope that lingered in the jar's depths. When Pandora opened the jar, the myths describe a rush of unseen forces, plagues that withered crops, sorrows that weighed on hearts, labors that bent backs. You can imagine the village waking to a changed world, a child's fever that wouldn't break, a field blighted overnight, a sudden storm tearing through thatched roofs. Archaeological records from Bronze Age Greece, like those at Pylos, show evidence of such struggles, bones marked by malnutrition, settlements abandoned after disasters. These were not abstract evils, but the daily realities of a people already familiar with hardship. Pandora, standing amid the chaos, might have felt the weight of the villagers' stares, their trust in her divine beauty replaced by fear. Prometheus, his faith in the gods shaken, could only watch as the world he knew unraveled. Yet, the myth insists that hope remained, trapped beneath the jar's hastily replaced lid. This detail, often overshadowed, speaks to the human spirit. The villagers didn't flee, they adapted. Women boiled herbs to soothe fevers, men rebuilt homes with salvaged timber, and priests offered more sacrifices, their altars stained with the blood of goats. These acts, small and uncelebrated, mirror the resilience found in archaeological traces, pottery mended with care, tools sharpened for another season. Pandora, too, endured, her role shifting from divine pawn to a figure of shared humanity. The myths don't tell us her fate, but you can picture her joining the women at the well, her hands steady as she carried water, her presence a reminder that even divine mistakes could be woven into mortal survival. The legacy of Pandora's jar is not chaos alone, but the balance it exposed. The evils she unleashed were already part of the human condition. Disease and toil were no strangers to Bronze Age life, but her act gave them form, a story to explain the unexplainable. Hope, that elusive remnant, became a tool not unlike the plows and looms of the village, sustaining people through winters and wars. Today, we see Pandora's echo in our own struggles, where curiosity drives progress but risks unintended consequences. New technologies like fire both illuminate and burn. As you step away from the village, the jar now silent, reflect on this fragile balance. Pandora's story reminds us that human choices, however small, ripple through time, shaping order and chaos alike. What hope do we cling to when our own jars are opened? And how do we rebuild in the shadow of our mistakes? Odysseus's long wander, survival in the wake of Trojan chaos. Imagine yourself on the rocky shores of Ithaca, where the Aegean sea laps against jagged cliffs and the scent of salt mingles with wild sage. The Trojan War has ended, its fires reduced to ash, but for Odysseus, king of this small island, the journey home is just beginning. The Odyssey Homer's epic, chronicles his decade-long wander, but strip away the divine interventions and you find a story of human endurance rooted in the mundane struggles of survival. Odysseus was no god-touched hero in shining armor. He was a man of wit and grit, navigating a world of storms, scarcity, and the fragile loyalties of his crew, all while longing for the olive groves of home. Picture Odysseus at Troy's fall, standing amid the smoking ruins, his bronze sword stained with blood. The Greeks' victory, secured by his cunning Trojan horse, came at a cost of rationed meals, sleepless nights, and the weight of lost comrades, as he boarded his black-hulled ship with his crew farmers, fishermen, and shepherds from Ithaca. He carried the exhaustion of war. Their ships, patched with pine tar and frayed ropes, were stocked with meager provisions, dried fish, barley, and watered wine. Archaeological finds from Bronze Age ports like Pylos revealed the reality of such voyages. Clay, amphorae for storing grain, fishing nets mended with bone needles, and the constant threat of storms or pirates. Odysseus's journey began with hope, but the sea was unforgiving. His first stop, the land of the Ciccones, saw his men raid a coastal village, only to be driven back by vengeful locals. You can envision the chaos, men scrambling to their ships, arrows whizzing past, and the loss of 6 crewmen per vessel. This wasn't divine wrath, but the harsh arithmetic of survival raiding for supplies risked retaliation. Odysseus, ever the strategist, rallied his men, his voice hoarse over the crash of waves, urging discipline. His leadership was practical, born of necessity, not myth. He navigated by stars, read the wind's shifts, and rationed their dwindling stores. Skills honed as a king who knew the lean winters of Ithaca. The myths weave tales of gods like Poseidon, thwarting him, but the real perils were human and elemental. Storms tore sails, hunger gnawed at bellies, and mutiny loomed as crewmen grew restless. On Ithaca, Penelope waited, weaving and unweaving her loom to fend off suitors, her own survival tied to cunning as much as her husband's. The island's people, scraping by on goat milk and barley bread, prayed to Athena for their kings. Return, their offerings left at simple stone altars. Odysseus's wander was not just his own. It was the story of a community enduring absence, their lives tethered to his fate. As you watch his ship vanish into the misty horizon, the sea stretching endless before him, you wonder, what kept Odysseus pressing forward through loss and uncertainty? And how did the ordinary acts of navigation, rationing, and leadership shape his path through chaos? The sea stretches before you, a restless expanse of grey under a clouded sky. As Odysseus's ship creaks through towering waves, you can almost feel the spray on your face, the deck slick beneath your feet, as his crew, weather-beaten men from Ithaca, haul ropes and mend sails torn by relentless winds. The Odyssey paints Odysseus's journey with fantastical encounters, but beneath the tales of Cyclops and Sirens lies a grittier reality. A man and his men surviving day by day, their lives bound to the practicalities of wind, water, and dwindling supplies. This is a story of endurance where the mundane acts of steering, fishing, and bartering kept them alive amid the chaos of the Aegean. After escaping the Ciccones, Odysseus's fleet reached the island of the Lotus Eaters, a place Homer describes as seductive with its sweet fruit. But imagine it as a real Bronze Age island, perhaps a trading outpost like those uncovered on Thera, where locals offered honeyed figs or popper-laced wine to weary sailors. The Lotus wasn't magic, but a temptation of comfort, lulling some of Odysseus's men into forgetting home. You can picture him dragging them back to the ships, their protests drowned by the crash of waves, his hands firm but his heart heavy. Leadership meant making hard choices, abandoning those who lingered risked the mission. Yet every loss cut deeper into his crew's morale. The sea itself was a greater foe. Bronze Age ships, like those depicted in Minoan frescoes, were fragile cedar, planks lashed with ropes, sails of patched linen. Storms could snap oars or scatter fleets, and archaeological evidence from shipwrecks off Buran shows cargoes of amphorae shattered. By such tempests, Odysseus, navigating by the stars' faint glow, relied on skills honed in Ithaca's rocky harbors. He read the sea's currents, rationed their stores of barley and dried goat meat, and kept watch for land. His men, their hands blistered from oars, grumbled over meager meals, their loyalty tested by hunger and fear. You can hear their whispers of mutiny, their faith in their king fraying as weeks turned to months. On Ithaca, life trudged on. Penelope's loom became a symbol of her own survival. Her nightly unweaving a quiet rebellion against suitors who devoured the island's resources. Excavations of Mycenaean households reveal the labor of women like her spinning wool, grinding grain, managing households under strain. The islanders, offering clay figurines to Poseidon for Odysseus' safety, clung to hope. Their lives a mirror of his perseverance. Odysseus' wonder was not just a personal trial, but a collective one, tying his fate to those waiting at home. As you stand on the pitching deck, the horizon empty save for the glint of waves, you sense the weight of Odysseus' choices. Each decision to sail on, to ration food, to quell dissent carried the risk of failure. What drove him to endure when the sea seemed endless, and how did the small, unspoken acts of his crew shape the journey's fragile hope? The Aegean lies dark and vast before you, its waves whispering secrets as Odysseus' ship, now battered and patched, cuts through the night. The Odyssey tells of monsters and gods, but the true climax of Odysseus' wonder is found in the quiet resilience of a man returning home, his survival woven from countless ordinary acts, mending ropes, bartering for grain, and holding fast against despair. After years of loss, from the Cyclops' cave to the whirlpool of Charybdis, Odysseus stands alone, his crew lost to storms and folly, washed ashore on Ithaca's rugged coast. This is not a hero's triumph, but a testament to human endurance. Grounded in the daily grind of survival, Odysseus' final trials were not divine but deeply human. On the island of the Phaeacians, where he washed up after a shipwreck, he was no king but a salt-crusted stranger, his tales of hardship earning him passage home. You can imagine him sitting by their hearth, his voice steady as he recounted years of hunger, navigating by Orion's faint light and burying comrades on foreign shores. Archaeological finds, like those from Bronze Age Sharia, suggest such. Hospitality was real. Trading ports offered shelter to sailors, their clay seals marking jars of wine and oil shared with guests. Odysseus' return relied on these kindnesses, a reminder that survival often hinged on the generosity of strangers. Back on Ithaca, he arrived disguised as a beggar, his home overrun by suitors. Penelope's steadfastness, her loom a shield against chaos, mirrored his own cunning. The final act, his slaying of the suitors, was less a battle than a calculated purge, his bow strung with the same precision he used to steer through storms. You can picture the whole, its stone floor slick with blood, as Odysseus reclaimed his place, not with divine aid, but through strategy and memory of home. Excavations of Mycenaean palaces reveal such halls, their hearths central to community, now stained by the cost of survival. The resolution of Odysseus' journey lies in its quiet aftermath. He reunited with Penelope. Their bond forged a new overshared endurance, and with Telemachus, a son grown in his absence, Ithaca's people, who had offered goats and barley to the gods, rebuilt their lives, their fields replanted, their altars still warm with offerings. The Odyssey ends not with glory, but with restoration, a return to the rhythms of planting, weaving, and storytelling. Yet the scars of his wonder-lost men, strained trust linger, a reminder of survival's cost. Reflecting on this, Odysseus's story echoes in our own struggles, where resilience is built from small acts, a meal shared, a course held steady, a home defended. His wonder, rooted in the real challenges of Bronze Age life, shows that survival is not a single victory, but a series of choices, each carrying the weight of hope and loss. As you leave Ithaca's shores, the sea calm at last, you might ask, what journeys do we undertake, and what ordinary strengths do we summon to find our way home? Prometheus's eternal bind, fire's gift, and the curse of Defiance step into the rugged highlands of ancient Greece, where the wind carries the scent of pine and the distant crackle of hearts. This is the world of Prometheus, the titan whose defiance of Zeus brought fire to humanity, a gift that reshaped mortal lives but chained him to an eternity of suffering. The myth, woven through Hesiod's Theogony and Aeschylus's Prometheus bound, is not one of grand battles but of quiet rebellion, rooted in the daily struggles of a Bronze Age people, who saw fire as both salvation and burden. Prometheus's story is one of sacrifice, where the mundane act of stealing a spark ignited a legacy that still burns in our collective memory. Imagine a time when humanity shivered in the dark, their lives bound to the mercy of seasons and predators. Without fire, there were no warm hearths, no forged tools, no roasted grain to ease hunger. Archaeological evidence from sites like Franchly Cave shows early Greeks huddled in damp shelters, their diets limited to raw roots and fish, their tools crude flint. Prometheus, a titan with foresight, saw their potential. Unlike the Olympian gods, who lounged in ethereal splendor, he walked among mortals, his form towering yet weathered, like the cliffs of his native Caucasus. His gift wasn't just flame, but the knowledge to sustain it, how to strike flint, feed kindling, and guard embers through the night. The act of stealing fire from Zeus's heavenly forge was no mythic spectacle, but a calculated risk. Picture Prometheus slipping into the divine workshop, perhaps on Lemnos, where Hephaestus's anvil still rang. He might have plucked a smouldering coal from the forge's edge, hiding it in a hollow reed, its glow faint but alive. This simple act, rooted in the real technologies of the Bronze Age, defied Zeus's decree that mortals remain subservient, their lives unlit by progress. Prometheus's rebellion was for the farmers who burned fields to enrich soil, the potters who fired clay into vessels, and the smiths who hammered bronze into sickles. These were the people whose lives turned on his gift, their hearts now glowing with warmth and possibility. Yet Zeus's wrath was swift. Prometheus was bound to a crag on Mount Caucasus, his body lashed by chains forged by Hephaestus himself. You can envision the Titan enduring the cold bite of iron, the wind tearing at his flesh, while below, mortals began to master fire. In villages, women tended hearths, their hands blackened as they baked flatbread, while men smelted ore, their labor easing the grind of survival. Prometheus's sacrifice gave them tools to thrive, but it also marked them as targets of divine envy. Their progress a spark of defiance in Zeus's eyes. As you stand on the windswept slopes, watching the first mortal fires flicker in the valley below, you wonder, what drove Prometheus to risk eternity for humanity's gain, and how did his gift, born of a single spark, reshape the fragile balance between gods and men? The chill of Mount Caucasus bites at you now, its jagged peaks stark against a sky heavy with clouds. Prometheus, chained to the rock, endures the wind's howl and the eagle's daily torment, his body unyielding despite the pain. Below, in the mortal world, fires burn brighter, their glow a testament to his rebellion. The Odyssey and Aeschylus's dramas paint Prometheus as a martyr, but his story is grounded in the practicalities of a Bronze Age world transformed by his gift. Fire was no mere symbol, it was the engine of survival, reshaping the lives of farmers, artisans, and traders who now cooked, forged, and thrived in its warmth, yet bore the weight of divine consequences. In villages scattered across Greece, fire changed everything. You can picture a family gathered around a clay hearth, their faces lit by flames as they roast barley or melt wax for seals. Archaeological finds from sites like Dimini reveal kilns, where potters fired clay into storage jars, their craftsmanship fueled by Prometheus's spark. Farmers used fire to clear fields, their ashes enriching soil for wheat and lentils, while smiths, like those on Lemnos, hammered bronze into tools and weapons, their forges echoing Hephaestus's divine anvil. These were ordinary people, mothers stirring porridge, men hauling charcoal whose lives were eased by fire's warmth but complicated by its demands. Tending a hearth required constant labor, gathering wood, striking flint, guarding embers against rain. Fire gave, but it also took. Its hunger for fuel a daily burden. Prometheus's gift also shifted the moral order. Before fire, mortals were subservient, their prayers to Zeus unanswered, their lives raw and cold. Now they stood taller, their tools sharper, their homes warmer. Yet, Zeus's punishment wasn't just for Prometheus but for humanity. The gods, envious of mortal progress, sent harsher winters and blights. As Hesiod notes in Works and Days, excavations at Mycenae show granaries depleted by failed harvests. A reminder that fire's benefits came with risks: overworked fields, deforested hills, and divine displeasure. Villagers whispered of Prometheus's sacrifice, offering clay figurines at small altars, their gratitude tinged with fear of Zeus's wrath. Prometheus, bound and bleeding, saw none of this. His chains, forged with the same fire he stole, were a cruel irony. You can imagine his gaze fixed on the horizon where mortal fires dotted the night, each a spark of his defiance. His foresight, the trait that named him, let him see humanity's potential but not his own release. The eagle's daily visits, tearing at his liver, were a reminder of Zeus's power. Yet Prometheus endured, his silence a rebellion of its own. The mortals below, unaware of his suffering, began to weave his story into their own, seeing in him a champion of their small victories, every plough forged, every loaf baked. As you stand beside Prometheus, the wind carrying the faint smoke of distant hearths, you sense the tension of his gift. Fire-empowered mortals, but at what cost to the balance between heaven and earth? And how did Prometheus's defiance ripple through the lives of those who tended its flames? The dawn breaks over Mount Caucasus, its light cruel as it reveals Prometheus, still bound. His body scarred but unbowed. The eagle wheels above, a daily reminder of Zeus's unrelenting wrath. Yet the Titan's eyes remain fixed on the mortal world below, where fires burn in hearths, forges, and fields. His gift of fire, stolen in defiance, has reshaped humanity, but its legacy is complex, a spark that warmed homes and forged tools, but also invited divine retribution. This is not a tale of triumph but of endurance, where the quiet acts of tending flames and rebuilding lives define Prometheus's impact, echoing through the Bronze Age and beyond. In the villages below, fire's influence is woven into daily life. You can see women fanning embers to bake bread, their hands dusted with ash, while men smelt copper into sickles, their forges glowing like small suns. Archaeological sites like Knossos reveal fire's transformative power, kilns that turned clay into durable pots, hearths that sustained families through lean winters. Yet, fire demanded sacrifice, forests felled for fuel, fields burned too often, leaving soil barren. Hesiod's works and days speaks of toil and sickness as Zeus's curse on mortals, a price for Prometheus's gift. Granaries, like those unearthed at Pylos, show signs of scarcity, their stores depleted by blight or drought, challenges that fire's warmth couldn't fully overcome. Prometheus's suffering became a story mortals told around their hearths. They saw him as a champion, not a god, but one who understood their labor. Small offerings, clay lamps, charred bones piled at village altars, honoring the Titan who gave them light but paid with his body. His chains, forged by Hephaestus, were a bitter mirror of the tools mortals now wielded, their bronze gleaming with the same fire that bound him. Aeschylus hints at a distant release by Heracles, but for now, Prometheus endures, his pain a silent hymn to human potential. You can imagine the villagers pausing at dusk, their fires casting long shadows, whispering thanks to the Titan whose defiance gave them more than warmth, it gave them agency. The legacy of Prometheus is not in the flames alone, but in the moral questions they sparked. Fire empowered mortals to build, to create, to defy the gods' indifference. But it also brought conflict, wars over resources, struggles over power. His gift shifted the balance, making humanity a partner in creation, yet forever marked by Zeus's envy. Today, we see his echo in every invention that pushes boundaries, from electricity to artificial intelligence, each carrying the promise of progress and the risk of hubris. As you step away from the crag, Prometheus's silhouette, fading in the morning mist, reflect on his sacrifice. His story, grounded in the hearths and forges of a distant past, reminds us that every spark of progress comes with a chain, whether divine or human-made. What fires do we kindle today, and what burdens do we accept to keep them burning? Athena's loom, weaving wisdom through deceptive thread, step into a quiet village in ancient Greece, where the air hums with the rhythmic clack of looms and the scent of wool dyed with madder root. This is the domain of Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, whose presence lingers not in grand temples but in the daily toil of weavers, their fingers threading stories into cloth. The myths, from Homer's Odyssey to Ovid's Metamorphoses, celebrate Athena's wisdom, but her true legacy lies in the subtle art of weaving, both literal and metaphorical, that shaped mortal lives. Her story is not one of divine spectacle, but of patient skill, where threads of deception and wisdom wove the fabric of survival in a Bronze Age world. Picture a weaver's workshop, its walls of mud brick warmed by a clay hearth. Women, their hands calloused from years at the loom, work under Athena's patronage, their shuttles darting through warp and weft to create cloaks and sails. Archaeological finds from sites like Akrotiri reveal looms weighted with clay stones, their patterns echoing the geometric designs Athena was said to favor. These women were the backbone of their communities, their textiles traded for grain or bronze, their labor-sustaining households through lean winters. Athena, often depicted with her owl and aegis, was their divine mirror, a goddess who valued precision, strategy, and the quiet power of creation. Athena's weaving extended beyond cloth to the strategies that guided heroes in the Odyssey. She shaped Odysseus's path, whispering plans for the Trojan Horse or guiding him through storms. Her wisdom was practical, rooted in the same foresight that helped weavers plan intricate patterns. You can imagine her as a figure moving among the looms, her presence felt in the steady rhythm of work, her mind spinning webs of deception to outwit gods and men. Her contest with Arachne, a mortal weaver who boasted of surpassing her, reveals this duality. As Ovid tells it, Arachne's tapestry was flawless, depicting divine flaws with bold threads, but Athena's was a lesson in order, showing the god's triumph. The contest wasn't just about skill, but about the balance of hubris and humility. In villages, Athena's influence shaped daily life. Weavers offered her small gifts, clay spindles, dyed wool at stone altars, praying for steady hands and clear minds. Their work was survival. A well-woven sail could carry a ship to trade. A cloak could shield a family from cold. Yet, Athena's wisdom carried a deceptive edge. Her guidance in war, like advising the Greeks at Troy, often cloaked cunning and virtue. Her plans unraveling enemies as a weaver unravels a flawed thread. The mortals who revered her knew this duality, their prayers tinged with awe and caution. As you watch a weaver thread her loom under the flicker of an oil lamp, the pattern emerging line by line, you wonder, how did Athena's blend of wisdom and deception shape the lives of those who worked in her shadow, and what threads of her cunning wove the fates of gods and mortals alike? The village workshop hums softly now, its looms casting long shadows as the sun dips low, painting the mud brick walls with amber light. You stand among the weavers, their fingers deftly guiding threads of wool dyed indigo and ochre each pass of the shuttle, a small act of creation under Athena's watchful gaze. Her wisdom, celebrated in myths like the Odyssey, was not just strategic but tactile, mirrored in the meticulous craft of these women whose textiles clothed families and sailed ships. Yet, Athena's gift of weaving carried a deceptive thread, her cunning plans like the Trojan Horse or Penelope's unraveling shroud, blending wisdom with subterfuge, shaping destinies in ways mortals could scarcely predict. Consider the contest with Arachne, as Ovid recounts in Metamorphoses. Arachne, a village weaver, boasted that her skill surpassed Athena's. Her tapestry a bold critique of divine misdeeds, Zeus's seductions, Poseidon's tempests. Athena's response, a tapestry of divine order, was flawless but stern, its threads depicting the god's supremacy. When Arachne's work rivaled hers, Athena's wrath transformed the mortal into a spider, a punishment for hubris. You can picture the scene, Arachne at her loom, her hands steady despite the goddess's presence, her patterns intricate as those found on Minoan pottery from Hephaestus, where weavers wove stories into clay. The contest was less about craft and more about the limits of mortal ambition under divine eyes. In the village, Athena's influence was practical yet profound. Weavers, like those whose loom weights lit sites like Mycenae, produced textiles that were currency traded for olive, oil or bronze, bartered in markets where merchants haggled over salted fish. These women, their backs bent from hours at the loom, prayed to Athena for precision, their offerings of clay whirls left at altars echoing her sacred owl. Their work sustained communities, but Athena's wisdom in war and strategy touched them too. Her guidance of Odysseus, cloaking him in disguises or inspiring the horse's deception, mirrored the weaver's art, threading plans through chaos, unraveling threats with care. You can imagine a weaver pausing, her shuttle still, as she heard tales of Troy, wondering if Athena's cunning spared or doomed her kin who sailed there. Athena's dual nature-wise yet deceptive shaped mortal lives subtly. The sails that carried Greek ships, woven by hands like these, bore her blessing, but her strategies also fueled wars that left villages bereft. Excavations at Troy reveal burnt homes and broken looms, signs of the cost of divine plans. The weavers, offering dyed threads to Athena's shrines, knew her gifts came with a price. Their prayers a balance of gratitude and caution. Their craft, like her wisdom, was a delicate weave of creation and consequence. As you watch the weaver's hands dance across the loom, the pattern emerging thread by thread, you sense the weight of Athena's influence. Her wisdom empowered mortals, but her deceptions wove traps as often as triumphs. What did it mean for mortals to live under her gaze? And how did her threads of cunning shape the fragile tapestry of their world? The village lies quiet now, its loom still as moonlight filters through the open doorway, casting silver threads. Across the workshop floor, you stand among the weaver's tools, clay weights, wooden shuttles, skeins of wool, each a testament to Athena's enduring presence. Her wisdom, woven into the fabric of mortal lives, was both a gift and a challenge. Its threads binding communities while unraveling others through deception. The myths, from the Odyssey to Arachne's tale, show Athena as a goddess of strategy, but her legacy is in the quiet resilience of those who worked her looms. Their lives shaped by the balance of craft and cunning. Athena's influence reached its climax in moments like the fall of Troy, where her wisdom guided Odysseus's deceptive horse, a plan as intricate as any tapestry. You can envision her not as a radiant deity, but as a weaver of fates, her mind threading paths through chaos. The Trojan horse, built under her inspiration, was a triumph of strategy, but its cost was borne by mortals' families burned in Troy's ruins, their looms reduced to ash. Archaeological evidence from Thessaloniki shows this destruction: shattered pottery, charred beams, lives undone by a goddess's plan. Yet, on Ithaca, Penelope's loom, unraveling each night to delay suitors, was Athena's wisdom in mortal hands, a quiet defiance that preserved a household. These acts, one destructive, one preservative, reveal Athena's dual legacy. The weavers, whose work sustained villages, understood this duality. Their textiles, cloaks for winter, sails for trade, were vital, as seen in the loom weights and dyed fragments found at Knossos. They prayed to Athena, leaving offerings of spun thread at her altars, seeking her clarity to navigate life's uncertainties. Their craft was survival, each thread a choice between order and chaos. Athena's guidance, whether in war or weaving, demanded precision, but also risk her wisdom empowered mortals to create, but exposed them to divine whims. The story of her Arachne, transformed for her hubris, lingered as a warning. To weave beyond one's place invited ruin, yet to weave well invited Athena's favor. The resolution of Athena's story lies not in a single act, but in the enduring impact of her craft. Her wisdom shaped heroes like Odysseus, who returned home through cunning, and weavers whose textiles held communities together. Yet, her deceptions left scars, wars sparked, lives unraveled. Today, we see her echo in the balance of innovation and consequence, where strategic minds weave solutions but risk unforeseen costs. The loom, like Athena's mind, is a tool of creation and destruction, its threads binding past to present as you step away from the workshop. The looms silent under the stars reflect on Athena's legacy. Her story, rooted in the steady hands of Bronze Age weavers, reminds us that wisdom is a delicate thread, easily tangled by pride or deception. What patterns do we weave in our own lives? And how do we balance the wisdom to create with the humility to avoid unraveling what matters most? Sisyphus's endless toil, the boulder of moral rebellion. Imagine yourself on a barren hillside. In ancient Greece, where the wind whistles through sparse grasses and the sun beats down on a lone figure, pushing a boulder. This is the world of Sisyphus, the cunning king of Corinth, whose myth, preserved in fragments by Homer and later poets, embodies not glory but relentless toil. His story, less about heroic deeds and more about defiance against divine order, resonates with the quiet struggles of ordinary lives in the Bronze Age, Sisyphus's eternal task rolling a stone uphill only for it to tumble back mirrors the endless labor of mortals who worked fields and built cities. Their efforts often undone by fate or gods, Sisyphus was no ordinary king. Known for his wit, he outsmarted death itself, tricking Thanatos and later Hades. To cling to life, his crimes, as the myths tell, were many, revealing Zeus's secrets, defying divine authority and cheating mortality. But picture him first in Corinth, a bustling port where ships unloaded amphorae of oil and grain. Archaeological digs at Isthmia reveal a city thriving on trade, its people merchants, potters, shepherds bound to daily routines of bartering, weaving, and herding. Sisyphus, ruling from a stone palace, was a man of the people, his cunning, born of necessity, like a farmer outwitting drought or a trader dodging pirates. His defiance began with small acts. When Zeus abducted the river nymph Aegina, Sisyphus betrayed the god's secret to her father, Asopus, trading divine favor for mortal gain, perhaps water for Corinth's fields. You can envision him standing by the river, his voice low, weighing the cost of his words. His later trickery, chaining Thanatos to avoid death, was less mythic spectacle and more a desperate grasp for life, rooted in the human fear of leaving loved ones behind. In Corinth, families offered clay figurines to Hermes for safe passage to the underworld, their lives shaped by the same mortality Sisyphus defied. His punishment, though, was eternal, condemned by Zeus to push a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down each time. Sisyphus became a symbol of futile labor. You can picture him, muscles straining, dust clinging to his sweat, the stone's weight a constant rebuke. Yet, his story echoes the Bronze Age reality. Farmers plowed rocky fields, only for rains to wash away their work. Builders raised walls, only for earthquakes to topple them. Excavations at Mycenae show such cycles repaired walls, rebuilt homes testifying to resilience in the face of loss. Sisyphus's toil was not just punishment, but a mirror of mortal perseverance. Each push a rebellion against despair dotters you. Watch him strain against the boulder, the hill stretching endlessly before him. You wonder, what drove Sisyphus to defy the gods at such cost? And how did his rebellion reflect the quiet struggles of those who toiled in his shadow? The hillside grows steeper under the midday sun, and you stand beside Sisyphus, his hands rough against the boulder's jagged surface, his breath ragged but unyielding. The myth of his eternal toil, etched in Greek tales, is less about divine punishment and more about the human spirit's refusal to bow, even when the gods demand it. In Corinth, his city, life pulsed with the rhythms of trade and toil. But Sisyphus's defiance, outwitting death and betraying Zeus, cast a shadow over mortals, who revered his cunning yet feared its cost. His story mirrors their own endless tasks, where every harvest, every wall, every life was a push against an uncaring world. Sisyphus's rebellion was rooted in his mortal roots. As king, he walked Corinth's agora, where potters shaped clay and merchants haggled over olives and wool. Excavations at Isthmia uncover clay seals and storage jars, signs of a city sustained by careful planning, much like Sisyphus's schemes. His betrayal of Zeus, revealing the god's abduction of Aegina, was a calculated act, perhaps securing water for drought-stricken fields. You can picture him by the Asopus River, his words a gamble for his people's survival, knowing Zeus's wrath could follow. His later trickery trapping Thanatos to avoid death was born of a universal fear, leaving his wife, Merope, and his city to chaos. In Bronze Age Greece, death was ever present. Graves at Mycenae hold offerings of bronze pins and pottery, signs of mortals clinging to life's fleeting warmth. His punishment, though, was a divine rebuke. Chained to his boulder, Sisyphus pushed with no hope of summit, the stone rolling back as Zeus decreed. You can imagine the dust in his throat, the ache in his shoulders, each step a defiance of futility. This mirrored the lives of Corinth's people, farmers who sowed fields only for storms to ruin them, weavers whose threads snapped under strain. Archaeological records show rebuilt homes and repaired walls, evidence of resilience against nature's whims. Sisyphus's toil became their story, whispered around hearths where families burned olive branches to ward off cold, their prayers to to Hermes tinged with gratitude for a king who dared to cheat fate. Yet, his rebellion stirred unease. The god's anger didn't spare mortals, droughts worsened, crops failed, as Hesiod's tales suggest. Villagers, offering clay figurines at altars, wondered if Sisyphus's cunning had cursed them too. His boulder was not just his burden, but a symbol of their own labor that sustained life but never promised victory. In Corinth, women spun wool, men mended nets, their work a quiet echo of his endless push. Each task a small rebellion against despair. As you watch Sisyphus brace against the stone, its weight unyielding, you sense the tension of his defiance. His cunning gave mortals moments of triumph, but at what cost to the divine order? And how did his struggle shape the lives of those who carried on in his city below? The twilight settles over the hillside, casting Sisyphus's silhouette against the fading sky, his boulder a dark weight that rolls back yet again. His eternal toil, a punishment for defying Zeus, is no mere myth but a reflection of the human condition where labor and loss intertwine. In Corinth, his absence left a city to carry on, its people weaving his story into their own as they faced their own unyielding tasks. Sisyphus's rebellion cheating death, betraying gods, was a spark of defiance, but its legacy lies in the quiet resilience of those who toiled in his shadow. There lives a testament to pushing forward despite futility. In Corinth, life persisted. Without its king, you can see the agora bustling with traders bartering fish and pottery, their voices rising over the clatter of carts. Women wove wool into cloaks. Men repaired walls battered by storms, their work echoing Sisyphus's endless. Archaeological finds at Isthmia reveal storage jars and bronze tools, signs of a community that endured through routine grinding barley, firing kilns, offering clay lamps to Hermes. Sisyphus's story became their own, told around hearths where embers glowed, a tale of a king who dared to challenge fate for love of life, his wife Merope, and his city's future. His punishment, though, was a warning. The boulder, rolling back each time, mirrored the setbacks of Bronze Age life, fields washed away, ships lost to waves, lives cut short by fever. Excavations at Mycenae show homes rebuilt after quakes, their stones stacked anew. Much like Sisyphus's unceasing effort, his defiance had cost. Zeus's wrath brought harsher seasons, as Hesiod hints, leaving granaries sparse. Yet the people of Corinth didn't despair. They honored Sisyphus with small offerings, carved stones, whispered prayers, seeing in him a mirror of their own persistence. His rebellion, though punished, gave them a story to cling to, a reminder that even futile labor could be a form of resistance. The climax of Sisyphus's tale is not victory but endurance. He pushed his boulder, knowing it would fall, just as mortals sowed fields knowing storms might come. His legacy is in this act of defiance, not against the gods alone, but against despair itself. Today, we see his echo in every task we undertake, without promise of success, building, creating, striving in a world that often pushes back. Sisyphus's hill is our own, his boulder the weight of our ambitions, his toil a reminder that meaning lies in the act, not the outcome. As you step away from the hill, Sisyphus's figure fading into the dusk, reflect on his rebellion. His story, rooted in the sweat and stone of a Bronze Age world, asks us to consider the value of defiance in the face of futility. What boulders do we push in our own lives? And how do we find purpose in the endless role of effort and loss? Icarus's waxen wings, hubris forged in Daedalus's workshop. Picture yourself in a sunlit workshop on the island of Crete, where the air smells of beeswax and cedar shavings, and the distant crash of waves echoes through open windows. This is the domain of Daedalus, the master craftsman of Greek myth, whose ingenuity crafted wonders and tragedies alike. His story, woven through Ovid's Metamorphoses and Apollodorus's accounts, centers on Icarus, his son, whose flight on waxen wings became a timeless caution against hubris. Yet, beneath the myth lies a tale of human ambition, rooted in the daily grind of Bronze Age artisans who shaped their world with tools and dreams, only to face the limits of their reach. Daedalus was no god, but a man of unmatched skill, his hands steady from years of carving wood and forging bronze. In Crete, under King Minos's rule, he built marvels like the labyrinth, amazed to confine them in not all. Its stone walls are testament to his genius. Archaeological finds at Knossos reveal such structures' intricate corridors, frescoed halls built by craftsmen who hauled limestone, and mixed plaster under Crete's relentless sun. Daedalus's workshop, cluttered with chisels, feathers, and pots of wax, was a hub of creation where he taught Icarus the craft. You can imagine the boy, barely a teen, sanding wood or stirring wax, his eyes bright with his father's passion for making. Their exile to Crete came after Daedalus's own hubris jealousy over his nephew's inventions led to a deadly act, banishing him from Athens. Minos, seeking his skills, kept him and Icarus as prized captives, their freedom traded for wonders like the labyrinth. But captivity chafed. Daedalus, watching gulls soar over the Aegean, devised wings of feathers and wax, a desperate bid for escape. You can picture him and Icarus laboring by lamplight, binding feathers with linen thread, melting beeswax over a clay brazier. This was no divine gift but a craftsman's solution, grounded in the materials of Bronze Age Crete wax from apiaries, feathers from slaughtered birds. Thread from village looms. The wings took shape slowly, each feather placed with care. Their frames light but fragile. Icarus, eager and restless, helped his father, his hands learning the patience of craft, but not its restraint. In Knossos, villagers wove sails and fished the sea, their lives tied to the same materials Daedalus used. Their prayers to Poseidon for safe voyages a reminder of the sea's dangers. Daedalus's plan was bold but practical, a craftsman's gamble against Minos's guards and the vast Aegean. As the wings neared completion, you can feel the tension in the workshop, the hope of freedom tempered by the risk of failure. As you watch Daedalus test a wing, its feathers fluttering in the breeze, you wonder, what drove him to risk everything on such a fragile invention? And how did Icarus's youthful ambition shape the tragedy waiting in the skies? The Cretan workshop is hushed now, lit only by the flicker of an oil lamp as you stand beside Daedalus and Icarus, their wings nearly complete. Feathers bound with wax and thread gleam faintly, a fragile promise of freedom. The myth of Icarus's flight, told by Ovid, is a cautionary tale, but its heart lies in the human struggle for escape. Rooted in the daily realities of Bronze Age Crete, Daedalus's ingenuity, honed by years of crafting, was a beacon for a people who lived by skill and survival. Yet his ambition and Icarus's recklessness carried a shadow that loomed over their escape. Daedalus's work was meticulous. You can picture him testing the wings, his calloused hands adjusting each feather, warning Icarus to fly neither to high nor to low lest the sun melt. The wax or the sea soaked the feathers. His instructions, practical as a sailor's knot, echoed the precision of Cretan artisans, whose tools and loom weights, found at Knossos, show a culture of careful craft. The wings were no miracle, but a product of Crete's resources. Wax from hillside hives, feathers from gulls, linen from looms like those in village homes. These materials, used for sails and nets, were the lifeblood of a trading island, where fishermen prayed to Poseidon and women wove cloth for distant markets. Icarus, though, was restless. At perhaps 15, his youth burned brighter than his father's caution. You can imagine him pacing the workshop, flexing the wings, dreaming of soaring like the eagles over Crete's cliffs. His ambition mirrored the spirit of Bronze Age youth, sons of potters or sailors who yearned for more than their father's trades. Daedalus's exile, a consequence of his own hubris in Athens, weighed on Icarus, who grew up under Minos's watchful guards. The labyrinth, a marvel Daedalus built, was a prison of sorts, its walls a reminder of their captivity. Escape was not just practical but personal, a chance to reclaim a life beyond Crete's shores. The villagers of Knossos, unaware of the wings, lived lives tied to the same skills. Women spun wool, men carved olive wood, their offerings of clay. Figurines left at altars for Athena, patron of craft. Their world, seen in frescoes of fishing boats and bull leaping, was one of balanced skill tempered by respect for nature's limits. Daedalus's wings, though, pushed those limits a gamble against the sea and sky. As he and Icarus prepared to flee, the workshop's air grew heavy with risk, the wax pots cooling, the feathers trembling in the breeze dot as you watch Icarus strap on his wings. His eyes alight with dreams of flight. You sense the tension between father and son. Daedalus's craft offered freedom, but Icarus's ambition threatened ruin. What drove Icarus to ignore his father's warnings? And how did their fragile wings carry the weight of both hope and hubris? The dawn breaks over Crete's cliffs, and you stand at the edge, watching Daedalus and Icarus leap into the sky, their waxen wings catching the first light. The myth of Icarus's fall, immortalized by Ovid, is a stark lesson in hubris, but its climax lies in the human cost of ambition, played out against the backdrop of a Bronze Age world where craft and survival were intertwined. Their flight, a fleeting triumph of Daedalus's skill, ended in tragedy, yet it echoes the resilience of those who dared to push beyond their limits, leaving a legacy that lingers in Crete's windswept shores. As they soared, Daedalus flew steady, his wings beating like a sailor's oar, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Icarus, though, climbed higher, his laughter ringing as he chased the sun, ignoring his father's cries. You can imagine the wax softening, feathers loosening, until he plummeted into the sea now named for him, the Icarian Sea. The tragedy was not divine but material. Wax, as found in Cretan hives, melts under heat, a fact artisans knew well. Excavations and nosos reveal wax seals on jars, proof of its daily use, but also its fragility. Icarus's fall was a craftsman's error amplified by youthful pride, a moment where ambition outstripped caution. Daedalus landed alone in Sicily, his wings intact but his heart broken. You can picture him collapsing on the shore, his tools useless without his son. The villagers of Crete, unaware of the flight, continued their work spinning wool, firing pottery, offering clay doves to Athena, their lives seen in nososes. Frescoes of leaping bulls and fishing boats were grounded in balance, respecting the sea and sky's limits. Daedalus's wings, though ingenious, defied those limits. A craftsman's dream undone by nature's reality. His grief became a story told in Crete's markets, where mothers warned children against soaring too high, their words weaving Icarus into a cautionary tale. The legacy of Icarus's fall is not just tragedy, but a reflection on human limits. Daedalus's craft pushed boundaries, much like the Minoan ships that sailed to Egypt, their hulls sealed with wax and pitch. Yet, his ambition and Icarus's recklessness showed the cost of ignoring restraint. Today, we see their echo in every bold invention: aircraft, rockets, technologies that lift us skyward but demand respect for their risks. Icarus's wings, fragile as they were, remind us that progress is a delicate balance. Its feathers bound by the wax of caution dot as you gaze over the Aegean. Its waves whispering Icarus's name reflect on their story, rooted in the tools and toil of a Bronze Age workshop. It speaks to the human drive to soar and the price of flying too close to the sun. What dreams do we chase, and how do we temper ambition with the wisdom to stay grounded? Medusa's stone gaze, Perseus and the Gorgon's timeless isolation. Picture yourself on a desolate shore of the mythical island of Seriphos, where the Aegean's waves crash against jagged rocks and the air carries the tang of salt and seaweed. This is the world of Perseus, the hero tasked with slaying Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned men to stone. Her story, woven through Ovid's Metamorphoses and Apollodorus's library, is not one of monstrous terror but of isolation, transformation, and the quiet struggles of a Bronze Age world where myths gave meaning to human fears. Medusa's tale and Perseus's quest reveals the cost of divine whims and the resilience of those who navigate their consequences. Medusa was not always a monster, once a mortal woman. Her beauty drew Poseidon's eye, and their union in Athena's temple sparked divine wrath. Athena, unyielding, transformed Medusa's locks into serpents, her gaze into a petrifying curse. Exiled to a cave on a distant isle, perhaps near the rocky coasts of the Cyclades, Medusa lived in solitude, her sisters Stheno and Euryale her only companions. You can imagine her in that cave, its walls damp with sea mist, her reflection in a still pool, a reminder of her lost humanity. The Bronze Age Greeks Whose fishing villages dotted these islands knew such isolation castaways on storm-tossed shores, their lives tied to the sea's mercy? Perseus, raised on Seriphos, was no born hero but a fisherman's son, his life shaped by the rhythms of mending nets and hauling fish. King Polydectes, seeking to rid himself of Perseus, demanded Medusa's head, a task meant to kill him. Guided by Athena and Hermes, Perseus received divine gifts, a reflective shield, winged sandals, and a sickle. These were no mere miracles, but tools grounded in the Bronze Age bronze mirrors from Mycenae, sickles like those found in Cretan graves. You can picture Perseus preparing, his hands calloused from nets, testing the shield's polish under a flickering lamp, his mother, Danae, praying to Zeus at a clay altar for his safe return. The journey to Medusa's lair was arduous. Perseus sailed past islands where villagers offered dried figs and wine to appease Poseidon, their boats fragile against the Aegean storms. Archaeological finds from Thebes show such seafaring lives. Amphorae for trade, fish hooks for survival. Medusa's cave, hidden among cliffs, was a place of dread, its entrance littered with stone figures, warriors frozen mid-step, their bronze armor dulled by time. Perseus, guided by Athena's wisdom, used the shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, his steps cautious, his breath shallow in the cave's chill dot. As you stand at the cave's mouth, hearing the faint hiss of serpents within, you wonder, what drove Perseus to face such a creature, and how did Medusa's isolation, born of divine punishment, shape the tragedy awaiting them both? The cave's darkness presses around you, its damp air heavy with the hiss of serpents and the faint clink of Perseus's bronze sickle against his shield. Medusa's lair, hidden on a remote island, is a tomb of silence, broken only by the drip of water and the rustle of her sister's wings. The myth of Perseus's quest, told by Ovid, is a tale of heroism, but its heart lies in the quiet tension of a mortal facing a cursed woman, both shaped by divine cruelty. In the Bronze Age world, where fishermen and weavers lived by skill and survival, Medusa's isolation and Perseus's daring reflect the fragile balance between human will and divine caprice. Perseus moved cautiously, his reflective shield catching glimmers of torchlight, showing Medusa's form without meeting her deadly gaze. You can imagine her not as a monster, but as a woman transformed, her serpentine hair writhing, her eyes hollow with years of solitude. Once a priestess, her violation by Poseidon and Athena's punishment severed her from humanity. The cave, perhaps like those found in Cycladic cliffs, was a prison. Its stone figures veiled heroes' testaments to her curse. Archaeological finds from Mycenae revealed bronze mirrors like Perseus's shield, polished to a sheen, used by artisans for precision. His tools, gifts from Athena and Hermes, were extensions of Bronze Age craft. Winged sandals evoking swift ships, a sickle honed like those for harvesting wheat. In Seriphos, life continued without Perseus. His mother, Danae, wove linen to fend off Polydectes' advances. Her loom acquired defiance like Penelope's. Villagers, hauling nets or firing pottery, offered clay fish to Poseidon, their lives tied to the sea that carried Perseus to his fate. Excavations at Thebes show such communities amphorae for oil, fish hooks for sustenance where survival demanded respect for nature's power. Perseus's quest was no grand adventure, but a desperate bid to prove himself, driven by Polydectes' challenge and his duty to protect Danae. You can picture him pausing in the cave, heart pounding, knowing one glance could end him. Medusa's isolation was a tragedy. Her sisters, immortal Gorgons, could not share her mortal grief, their wings beating in the dark. She was a victim of divine politics, her beauty a law, her curse a punishment for Poseidon's act. The Bronze Age Greeks, who told her story around hearths, saw her not just as a monster but as a warning. Beauty and defiance could draw divine wrath. Their offerings to Athena, clay owls and woven threads, sought balance. Fearing a fate like Medusa's, Perseus, navigating her lair, carried their hopes and fears, his sickle raised not in triumph but in necessity. As you stand in the caves, shadows watching Perseus inch closer, the serpent's hiss growing louder. You sense the weight of their encounter. Medusa's gaze was a curse, but Perseus's mission was no less burdened. What drove him to sever her head, and how did their shared humanity, marred by divine cruelty, shape the moment of her death? The cave's silence is shattered as Perseus's sickle flashes, severing Medusa's head. Her serpentine locks falling still, you stand in the dim light, the air thick with dust and the echo of her final breath. The myth, as told by Ovid, crowns Perseus a hero, but its climax is a human tragedy to figures Medusa and Perseus. Bound by divine cruelty, their encounter ending in death yet sparking new life. In the Bronze Age world, where villagers fished and wove under the gods' gaze, their story reflects the cost of survival and the enduring power of transformation. Even in isolation, Perseus, guided by Athena's shield, struck without meeting Medusa's eyes, his blade cutting through her. Curse! You can imagine the moment, her head falling, blood pooling on the cave floor, birthing Pegasus and Chrysaor, mythical offspring that hint at her lingering divinity. The act was no triumph but a necessity, driven by Polydectes' threat and Perseus's duty to Danae. He wrapped the head in a sack, its gaze still deadly, and fled, winged sandals carrying him over the Aegean. Archaeological finds from Mycenae bronze sickles, polished mirrors ground this myth in reality. Tools of survival repurposed for a hero's task. Perseus's journey back was perilous, his ship battered by storms much like those that sank. Vessels off Thera's coast in Seriphos, life persisted. Danae wove, villagers fished, their offerings of clay fish to Poseidon a plea for calm seas. Perseus's return, Medusa's head in hand, was a turning point. He turned Polydectes to stone, freeing Danae, a quiet victory rooted in loyalty. The villagers, hearing his tale, wove it into their own, seeing Medusa not just as a monster but as a woman wronged. Her story told around hearths where embers glowed. Excavations revealed such communities' pottery shards, loom weights where survival demanded resilience against divine whims. Medusa's head, later Athena's aegis, became a symbol of protection, its gaze warding off evil, a bittersweet legacy of her isolation. Medusa's tragedy resonates beyond her death. Once human, her transformation and exile reflect the Bronze Age fear of divine punishment, where beauty or defiance could invite ruin. Her story, like Perseus's, is one of survival, his through cunning, hers through enduring solitude. Their encounter, born of necessity, left a mark, Pegasus's wings, the Gorgon's head as a shield. A reminder that even tragedy births creation. Today, we see Medusa's echo in stories of outcasts, their strength hidden in isolation, and in heroes who act not for glory, but for those they protect. As you step from the cave, the sea stretching before you, reflect on their shared fate. Medusa and Perseus, bound by divine cruelty, show that heroism and tragedy are two sides of the same blade. What do we carry from our own encounters with fear? And how do we transform isolation into a legacy that endures? Orpheus's lyre, descending into Hades' shadowy realm, envision yourself in a quiet glade. In ancient Thrace, where the air hums with the strum of a lyre and the scent of pine drifts on the breeze. This is the world of Orpheus, the poet-musician, whose songs could charm beasts and bend rivers, as told in Ovid's Metamorphoses and Virgil's Georgics. His tale, centered on his descent into Hades to reclaim his love, Eurydice, is not one of heroic conquest but of love's fragile power, set against the daily struggles of a Bronze Age world. Orpheus's lyre, a tool of art and defiance, wove beauty into a life of toil. Yet its notes could not undo the shadow of death. Orpheus was no warrior but a poet. His lyre crafted from wood and gut strings, its music a bridge between mortal and divine. In Thrace, a land of shepherds and farmers, he sang of harvests and stars, his voice easing the burdens of those who tilled rocky fields or herded goats. Archaeological finds from sites like Pella reveal clay lyres and bone flutes, evidence of music's role in Bronze Age life played at feasts offered to Apollo. Soothing weary souls, Orpheus's songs, said to calm wild beasts, mirrored the shepherd's own tunes, coaxing flocks through mountain passes. His love for Eurydice, a woman of Thrace, was the heart of his music, her presence in his songs as vital as the grain in village stores. Eurydice's death, bitten by a viper while dancing in a meadow, shattered Orpheus. You can picture him, lyre, silent, standing by her grave, a simple mound marked with a clay figurine, as was the custom in Thracian burials. His grief drove him to Hades' realm, a journey not through myth but through courage born of loss. The underworld, imagined as a cavern beneath the earth, was a place Bronze Age Greeks knew through rituals of offerings of barley and wine to Persephone. Left at stone altars, Orpheus, carrying only his lyre, descended, his songs a plea to soften death's grip, a task as daunting as a farmer facing drought. His journey was not alone. Villagers in Thrace, spinning wool or firing pottery, whispered of his daring, their lives tied to the same gods he sought to sway. Excavations uncover their world amphorae for oil, hearths for warmth where music and prayer were lifelines against mortality. Orpheus's lyre, strung with the same gut as their fishing nets, was his only weapon. Its notes a fragile hope against the underworld's darkness. As you stand in the glade, hearing the faint echo of Orpheus's lyre, you wonder, what drove him to face Hades for love, and how did his music, born of mortal hands, challenge the unyielding shadow of death? The darkness of Hades' realm envelops you, a cavernous chill broken only by the trembling notes of Orpheus's lyre, its strings echoing off unseen walls. The myth, as Ovid tells it, paints Orpheus's descent as a poet's audacious plea, but its heart lies in the human ache for love, set against the stark realities of a Bronze Age world, where death was a constant shadow. In Thrace, villagers toiled to survive, their lives tied to the same rhythms Orpheus sought to sway with his music songs that softened even the underworld's grim lords, yet carried the weight of mortal fragility. Orpheus moved through Hades, his lyre's notes, a beacon in the gloom. You can imagine him, voice steady despite fear, singing of Eurydice's laughter, her steps in Thracian meadows. His music, rooted in the same wood and gut as instruments found in Pella's graves, reached Hades and Persephone, their stone hearts stirred by mortal love. The shade souls of farmers, weavers, warriors paused, their whispers stilled as Orpheus sang. His plea was granted. Eurydice could follow him to the light, but only if he did not look back. This condition, a test of trust, mirrored the Bronze Age faith in rituals, offerings of wine and barley to Persephone, left at altars to appease death's grip. Back in Thrace, life trudged on. Villagers wove wool, fired clay pots, and herded goats, their days marked by the labor of survival. Excavations at sites like Varna revealed their world clay figurines, bronze tools, signs of a people who honored the dead with grave goods, hoping for mercy in the afterlife. Orpheus's journey was their story too, a poet daring what they could not, to challenge death for love. His lyre, strung like their fishing nets, was a tool of defiance, its music a prayer for Eurydice's return. You can picture the villagers, gathered at dusk, whispering of Orpheus, their offerings to Apollo clay lyres, woven reeds pleading for his success. The underworld's silence was a mirror of their fears. Death was no myth but a reality. Children lost to fever, fishermen drowned in storms. Orpheus's descent was a gamble, his songs a fragile thread against Hades' unyielding law. His love for Eurydice, woven into every note, was not just personal, but universal, echoing the grief of Thracian mothers who buried their own, their altars piled with clay doves. The condition not to look back was cruel, a divine test that preyed on human doubt, as familiar to villagers as the uncertainty of harvests or seized daughters. You stand in Hades' shadows. Hearing Orpheus's lyre grow faint, you sense the fragility of his hope. His music swayed gods, but could it hold against the pull of doubt? What drove him to risk everything for Eurydice, and how did his songs, born of mortal love, resonate in a world where death always loomed? The underworld's dim light fades as you follow Orpheus upward, his lyre silent. Eurydice's steps faint behind him. The myth's climax, as Ovid recounts, is no triumph but a heart-wrenching loss, where love's power falters against human doubt. Orpheus's journey, set in a Bronze Age world of shepherds and weavers, speaks to the fragile hope of those who faced death's certainty, their lives sustained by music, ritual, and resilience. His lyre, a tool of defiance, carried him to Hades' heart, but could not rewrite the laws of mortality. Leaving a legacy of love and loss, Orpheus, nearing the light, turned back, his doubt stronger than his trust. You can imagine the moment. His eyes meeting Eurydice's, her form dissolving into shadow, lost forever. His lyre fell silent, its strings slack, as he stumbled into the sunlight alone. The tragedy was human, not divined out, like the fear of failed harvests or lost kin. Was a Bronze Age reality. Excavations at Thracian sites like Suthopolis revealed graves with clay lyres. Signs of music's role in mourning, echoing Orpheus's grief. His failure was not just personal, but a mirror of mortal limits. Where love could challenge death, but not conquer it. In Thrace, life endured. Villagers wove wool, fired pottery, and offered barley to Persephone, their altars heavy with hope for the dead. Orpheus's story spread, sung around hearths. His lyre a symbol of love's power and fragility. His music, once calming rivers, now mourned Eurydice, its notes carrying the weight of loss. Archaeological finds bone flutes, clay figurines show a culture where music suited pain, much like Orpheus's songs. His later death, torn apart by Mythology, was a final tragedy. His lyre floating down the Hebrus River, its strings still humming. Villagers, hearing the tale, saw him as one of their own, a poet who dared to love beyond death. Orpheus's legacy is not victory, but the endurance of art. His lyre, like the tools of Thracian shepherds, gave voice to human longing. Its notes, a defiance of silence. His descent, like their rituals, was a plea against mortality's finality, a reminder that love persists in song and story. Today, we hear his echo in every artist who creates through grief, every song that carries loss into beauty. His failure was human, but so was his courage, rooted in the hearths and fields of a Bronze Age world. As you step from Hades' shadow into Thrace's glade, the lyre's echo fading, reflect on Orpheus's journey. His story, woven through the toil and rituals of his people, asks what we risk for love and how we sing through loss. What songs do we carry into our own darkness, and how do they light the way when hope falters? Theseus and the Minotaur, navigating the labyrinth's mortal stake step into the bustling port of Athens, where the scent of olive oil and sea salt mingles with the clamor of merchants and oarsmen. This is the world of Theseus, the young hero, who faced the Minotaur, a beast born of divine wrath and human folly. As told in Apollodorus's Library and Plutarch's Life of Theseus, his journey to Crete's labyrinth is not one of mythic glory, but of courage grounded in the gritty realities of a Bronze Age world where survival hinged on cunning and sacrifice. Theseus's tale is a story of navigating chaos, both in the maze and in the lives of those who sent him to face it. Theseus, a prince raised in Trojan, arrived in Athens to claim his birthright as King Aegeus' son. The city, perched on rocky hills, was a hub of trade and tension, its people potters, sailors, weavers burdened by Crete's demand for tribute, 7 youths and 7 maidens sent to the Minotaur. Every 9 years, archaeological finds from Athens, like clay tablets and bronze daggers, reveal a society under strain, its altars heavy with offerings to Athena for protection. Theseus, strong and bold, volunteered to join the tribute, his resolve forged not by divine mandate, but by a need to prove himself and free his city. The voyage to Crete was perilous. The Aegean storms a constant threat. You can picture Theseus on a black-hulled ship, its cedar planks creaking, his companions youths barely older than him clutching cloaks against the spray. Their ship, like those in Minoan frescoes from Akrotiri, carried clay jars of wine and oil, meager provisions for a doomed journey. In Crete, under King Minos' rule, the labyrinth awaited, a maze crafted by Daedalus to cage the Minotaur, a creature born of Persephone's cursed union with a bull. The beast, half man, half bull, was no mere monster but a symbol of Crete's power, its hunger fed by Athenian blood. Theseus's task was clear: enter the labyrinth, slay the Minotaur, and escape. Ariadne, Minos' daughter, gave him a thread to navigate the maze, a simple tool rooted in Crete's weaving traditions, where linen threads, like those found in Knossos' looms, were lifeblood. You can imagine Theseus tying the thread at The entrance, his hands steady despite the darkness ahead. His companions' prayers to Poseidon echoing in the port. Athens, waiting for his return, held its breath, its people offering clay figurines at altars, their lives tied to his fate daughters. You watched Theseus step toward the labyrinth's mouth. The thread trailing behind him, you wonder, what drove him to face a beast born of divine shame? And how did the ordinary tools of a Bronze Age world thread, courage, cunning shape his path through the maze? The labyrinth's stone walls loom around you, their damp chill swallowing the faint light as Theseus grips Ariadne's thread, its linen taut in his calloused hands. The myth of his battle with the Minotaur, recounted by Apollodorus, is a tale of heroism, but its heart lies in the human struggle to navigate chaos, grounded in the tools and toils of a Bronze Age world. Theseus, a prince-turned-tribute, faced not just a beast, but the weight of Athens' hopes. His path through the maze a testament to cunning over brute strength. In a culture where survival demanded both, inside the labyrinth, the air grows heavy, the Minotaur's distant roars echoing off Daedalus' intricate stonework. You can picture Theseus moving cautiously, the thread woven like the sails of Cretan ships guiding him through twists and turns. Archaeological finds at Knossos reveal such architecture. Corridors of gypsum and limestone, frescoes of bulls, hinting at the Minotaur's mythic roots. The creature, born of Pasiphae's divine curse, was a symbol of Crete's dominance, its hunger attacks on Athens' youth. Theseus, armed with a bronze sword, perhaps like those found in Mycenaean graves, relied on Ariadne's thread, a weaver's tool-turned lifeline. Its simplicity a contrast to the maze's complexity. In Athens, the city waited, its people grinding, barley or mending nets, their lives tied to the sea that carried Theseus away. Excavations uncover their world clay altars with offerings to Athena, amphorae for oil where fear of Crete's tribute loomed large. Theseus's companions, the other tributes huddled in Crete's port, their prayers to Poseidon for his success as vital as their fishing nets. Ariadne's role was pivotal. Her thread, rooted in the looms of Knossos, was a gift of love and defiance, risking her father Minos' wrath. You can imagine her watching from the palace, her hands twisting wool, her heart torn between loyalty and longing. The Minotaur was no mere beast, but a mirror of human flaws, divine punishment for mortal desires, like the hubris that plagued Bronze Age rulers. Theseus's fight, when it came, was brutal but swift, his sword striking in the dark, guided by instinct and the thread's steady pull. The maze, like the challenges of Bronze Age life storms, famines, wars, was a test of navigation where cunning trumped force. Villagers in Athens and Crete, hearing whispers of his deed, saw Theseus as one of their own, his courage born of the same resilience that rebuilt homes after quakes, or replanted fields after floods. Daughters, you follow Theseus deeper into the labyrinth, the thread his only guide. You sense the stakes of his mission. His fight was not just for survival, but for a city's freedom. What drove him to face the Minotaur's horns, and how did Ariadne's thread, a weaver's humble gift, weave hope into a world shadowed by sacrifice? The labyrinth's silence breaks, with the Minotaur's final bellow as Theseus's sword finds its mark, blood pooling on the stone floor. You stand in the maze's heart, the air thick with dust and triumph, Ariadne's thread trailing back to the light. The myth, as Plutarch tells it, crowns Theseus a hero, but its climax is a human victory, forged in cunning and sacrifice, rooted in the Bronze Age world of Athens and Crete. His triumph over the Minotaur freed a city, but left ripples of loss, a reminder that even heroic deeds carry costs in a world of fragile hopes. Theseus emerged from the labyrinth, thread in hand, leading his fellow tributes to safety. You can imagine him, breathless, bronze sword stained, following the linen lifeline back to Crete's sunlit shore. The Minotaur, a creature of divine shame, lay dead, its end breaking Crete's hold over Athens. Archaeological finds at Knossos Bull, frescoes, labyrinthine halls hint at the myth's roots in Minoan rituals, where bulls symbolized power. Theseus's victory was not just personal but collective, freeing Athens from tribute. Yet Ariadne's role was bittersweet. She fled with Theseus, abandoning her home, only to be left on Naxos. Her thread of fleeting gift that bound her to his fate. In Athens, the news spread like wildfire. Villagers, grinding barley or weaving wool, rejoiced, their altars piled with clay doves for Athena. Excavations revealed their world amphory, bronze tools where survival meant resilience against loss. Theseus's return was marred by tragedy. Forgetting to hoist white sails, he signaled failure, and Aegeus, his father, leapt to his death in the sea now named for him. The Aegean's waves, like those in Theros' shipwrecks, carried the weight of human error. Theseus, now king, bore this grief, his heroism tempered by the cost of oversight, a burden as heavy as the Minotaur's horns. The legacy of Theseus's deed endures beyond the maze. His cunning, like Ariadne's thread, wove freedom from oppression. A story told in Athenian hearths, where mothers spun tales of courage. The labyrinth became a metaphor for life's challenges navigating trade, war, or famine with tools as simple as thread or bronze. Today, we see Theseus's echo in every struggle against overwhelming odds, where ingenuity and sacrifice paved the way. His victory, grounded in the looms and swords of a Bronze Age world, reminds us that heroism is not divine but human, its threads fragile yet enduring. As you step from the labyrinth into Crete's light, the thread coiled at your feet. Reflect on Theseus's journey. His story, woven through the lives of those who prayed for his return, asks what we risk for freedom and how we bear the losses that follow. What mazes do we navigate, and what threads guide us through the shadows to triumph or tragedy? Pandora's jar. Curiosity unleashed in a world of hope. Imagine yourself in a humble village in ancient Greece, where the scent of barley porridge and wood smoke drifts from clay hearths, and the clatter of looms fills the air. This is the world of Pandora, the first woman crafted by the gods, as told in Hesiod's Theogony and Works and Days. Her story, centered on the jar that unleashed woes upon humanity, is not one of villainy but of curiosity, set against the daily struggles of a Bronze Age people who saw their world shaped by divine whims. Pandora's tale is a reflection of human nature, where a single act of wonder reshaped the fragile balance of joy and sorrow. Pandora was no mortal born of earth but a creation of Zeus, molded from clay by Hephaestus, adorned with gifts by Athena and Aphrodite. She was sent to Prometheus, a titan who accepted her despite Prometheus's warnings. You can picture her in a mud-brick home, her hands learning to spin wool or grind grain, a figure both divine and human. Archaeological finds from sites like Demini reveal such homes' clay hearths, loom weights where women's labor sustained families. Pandora's beauty was a divine gift, but her curiosity, a trait as human as the villager's own, became her legacy. The jar, often misnamed a box, was no simple vessel but a pithos, a large clay storage jar like those unearthed at Mycenae, used to hold grain or oil. Zeus gave it to Pandora, its contents sealed, a test of her will. In the village, such jars were lifelines, their contents guarding against famine. You can imagine Pandora, her fingers tracing the jar's rim, her mind stirred by whispers of its secrets. The gods' command to keep it closed clashed with her curiosity, a spark familiar to Bronze Age Greeks who questioned storms or crop failures, their altars piled with clay figurines to appease Zeus or Demeter. Her act of opening the jar was no malice but a moment of human impulse. When she lifted the lid, woes, disease, strife, hunger flew out, scattering across the world. Only hope remained, trapped beneath the lid, a bittersweet gift. Villagers, toiling in fields or weaving cloth, felt these woes in their daily lives: sickness that stole children, droughts that withered crops. Pandora's story, told around their hearths, was not one of blame but of recognition. Her curiosity a mirror of their own questioning hearts. As you stand in the village, watching Pandora by her jar, its clay gleaming in the firelight, you wonder what drove her to open it, and how did her curiosity, a human trait, reshape a world already heavy with mortal burdens. The village hums softly now, its hearths glowing as dusk settles, casting shadows across Pandora's mud-brick home. You stand beside her, the pithos jar looming in the firelight, its sealed lid a silent challenge to her restless curiosity. Hesiod's works and days frames her act as a divine trap, but its heart lies in the human impulse to question, set against the Bronze Age world where survival demanded both caution and daring. Pandora's jar, a vessel of clay like those in every home, held woes that reshaped lives. Yet its lingering gift of hope became a thread woven into the fabric of mortal resilience. Pandora's curiosity was not born in isolation. In the village, women spun wool, men tilled fields. There lives a cycle of labor to stave off hunger or cold. Archaeological finds from Mycenae clay jars, grinding stones show a world where storage was survival, each pithos a bulwark against scarcity. Pandora, crafted by gods yet living among mortals, shared their daily tasks, her hands kneading dough or threading a loom. You can picture her pausing by the jar, its weight familiar yet mysterious, her thoughts echoing the villagers' own questions about storms or failed harvests. Her act of opening it was no defiance but a spark of wonder, as human as a child's gaze at the stars. When the lid lifted, woes poured forth disease that felled shepherds, strife that tore families, hunger that emptied granaries. You can imagine the village reeling, crops wilting as seen in charred seeds from Demene or fevers claiming lives, as graves with clay offerings attest. Yet Pandora's jar held one final gift, hope trapped beneath the lid, a fragile force that lingered in hearths where families prayed to Demeter for better seasons. The Bronze Age Greeks, offering clay figurines at altars, saw hope as a tool, like a plough or spindle, sustaining them through loss. Pandora's act, though blamed by gods, mirrored their own risks planting fields despite drought, sailing seas despite storms. Prometheus, her husband, bore the gods' wrath to his acceptance of Pandora, a choice that echoed mortal trust. The villagers, whispering her story, did not curse her but saw her as one of their own, a woman whose curiosity unleashed pain, but also revealed hope's quiet power. Their lives, marked by weaving, grinding and praying, carried the same tension. To act was to risk, yet to do nothing was to perish. Pandora's jar became their story, its woes a shared burden, its hope a shared light. As you watch Pandora seal the jar, hope trapped within, you sense the weight of her act. Her curiosity loosed sorrow, but also kindled resilience. What drove her to lift the lid, and how did hope, a fragile gift, sustain a world now burdened by woes? The village lies quiet under starlight, the pithos jar now sealed, its woes scattered across the world like ashes from a dying hearth. You stand in Pandora's home, the fire's glow fading as her story, told by Hesiod, reaches its bittersweet close. Her act of opening the jar, driven by curiosity, unleashed suffering but left hope behind. A fragile gift that shaped the lives of Bronze Age Greeks who toiled under divine whims. This is not a tale of blame, but of resilience, where hope became a tool as vital as clay or bronze, sustaining a world forever changed. The woes from Pandora's jar touched every corner of the village. You can envision families huddling by hearths, their children fevered, their fields barren as disease and hunger took hold. Archaeological evidence from Mycenae empty granaries. Charred bones shows a world where scarcity was real, where mortals faced the gods' wrath with offerings of clay doves to Demeter or Zeus. Yet, hope remained trapped in the jar, a spark that fueled their labor. Women wove wool into cloaks, men replanted fields, their altars heavy with prayers for better days. Hope was no divine gift, but a human choice. As practical as grinding grain or firing pottery. Pandora, now a figure of village tales, was no villain. Her curiosity, like that of a farmer testing new soil or a sailor braving uncharted seas, was human. You can picture her, head bowed, sealing the jar. Her act a mirror of the villagers' own risks, each plough driven, each net cast a gamble against loss. The Bronze Age Greeks, whose lives are seen in loom weights and amphorae from Demene, wove her story into their own, seeing hope as a thread that bound them through sorrow. Their offerings, small clay figures left at shrines, honored not just gods but the resilience Pandora's act revealed. Her legacy endures beyond the jar. The woes she unleashed, strife, sickness, were already part of mortal life as Hesiod's tales of toil suggest. but hope gave meaning to their struggles. It was the light in a weaver's steady hands, the courage in a fisherman's sail, the persistence in a rebuilt wall after a quake. Today, we see Pandora's echo in every act, of curiosity that drives progress from science to art, and in the hope that sustains us through failure. Her jar, a simple pathos, reminds us that human acts, however flawed, can birth resilience. As you step from Pandora's home, the village sleeping under the stars reflect on her story. Rooted in the hearths and fields of a Bronze Age world, it asks what we risk in our curiosity and how hope, fragile as clay, holds us through the woes we unleash. What jars do we open? And how do we carry hope in a world heavy with sorrow? Prometheus's fire, the spark of defiance in a mortal world. Picture yourself on a rugged mountainside. In ancient Greece, where the wind carries the scent of pine and the distant clang of bronze tools echoes from a village below. This is the world of Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods. As told in Hesiod's Theogony and Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, his story is not one of divine glory but of defiance, a spark that lit mortal lives with warmth and progress set against the Bronze Age struggles of a people who toiled under the gods' gaze. Prometheus's fire, both gift and curse, reshaped humanity's path. Its flames flickering in every hearth. Prometheus, a cunning titan, saw mortals shivering in darkness, their lives bound to roam eat in cold nights. Crafted from clay by his own hands, humans were his kin, their fragility a call to action. You can imagine him watching a village, its mud brick homes huddled against the chill, their inhabitants farmers, weavers, potters scraping by without heat or light. Archaeological finds from sites like Dimini reveal such lives: clay hearths, unlit, tools of flint and bone, a world where survival meant endless labor. Prometheus's heart stirred, his defiance born of pity, not pride. His theft of fire was no simple act. He scaled Olympus, where Zeus hoarded divine flame, and stole a spark, perhaps from Hephaestus's forge, its glow hidden in a reed. You can picture him descending, the spark flaring, his steps swift to evade divine eyes, fire a force as vital as the bronze blades found in Mycenaean graves was a gift of creation, cooking food, forging tools, warming homes. Villagers, offering clay figurines to Zeus at stone altars, knew fire's power but not its source. Their prayers tinged with awe for the gods who controlled it. Prometheus's act was a rebellion, handing mortals a tool to rival divine might. Zeus's wrath was swift. Prometheus was bound to a rock, an eagle sent to tear his liver daily, a punishment as eternal as the fire he gave. You can envision him chained, the wind biting his skin, yet unrepentant. The villagers below, now kindling hearths, with his gift, felt its warmth, but also its cost. Zeus's anger brought harsher storms, leaner harvests. Their lives, seen in charred seeds and rebuilt walls at Mycenae, were a balance of gain and loss. Their new fires a symbol of progress and peril. As you stand on the mountainside, watching a village hearth flicker with stolen flame, you wonder, what drove Prometheus to defy Zeus for mortals, and how did his fire, a spark of rebellion, reshape a world caught between divine power and human need? The village below glows with firelight, its hearths now alive with Prometheus's stolen gift, casting warmth across mud-brick homes. You stand on the mountainside, the wind carrying the scent of burning olive wood as Prometheus, chained above, endures Zeus's eagle. His myth, woven through Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound, is a tale of defiance, but its heart lies in the human struggle to wield fire's power. Set against a Bronze Age world where survival hinged on tools and resilience, Prometheus's spark lit lives but invited divine wrath, its flames a double-edged gift for mortals who toiled below. Fire transformed the village. You can picture women roasting barley, men forging bronze blades, their work eased by flames that once eluded them. Archaeological finds from Dimini charred hearths. Bronze tools show how fire reshaped daily life, cooking preserved food, forging strengthened weapons, warmth staved off winter's bite. Yet, Prometheus's gift came with a price. Zeus's anger brought storms that flooded fields, as seen in waterlogged ruins at Mycenae, and scarcity that emptied granaries. Villagers, offering clay doves to appease Zeus, whispered of the Titan who dared to steal from the gods, their gratitude mixed with fear. Prometheus's defiance was not just for fire, but for humanity's potential. You can imagine him, bound to the rock, his gaze fixed on the village, seeing mortals learn to smelt ore or bake clay, skills that echoed his own creation of humans from clay. His act was a rebellion against divine control, a spark of autonomy for a people who ploughed rocky fields or wove wool under starlight. Their lives, marked by loom weights and amphory, were a testament to resilience, each firelit tasker small. Defiance of nature's hardships, Prometheus's suffering, his liver torn daily, mirrored their own enduring pain for progress. The villagers' stories grew around Prometheus. Around hearths they told of his theft, their voices low, wary of divine ears. Their altars, piled with clay figurines for Hephaestus, honored the forge god, but also the Titan who brought fire's spark. Fire was no mere tool, but a symbol of human will, its flames lighting paths through darkness, as vital as the bronze sickles that cut their grain. Yet, Zeus's wrath reminded them of their place mortals who dared too much, risked divine retribution, their harvests and homes as fragile as the flames they tended. As you watch the village fires flicker, Prometheus's chains clinking above, you sense the tension of his gift. His defiance gave mortals light, but at what cost to the divine order? How did fire, a stolen spark, reshape the lives of those who warmed their hands by it? And what burdens did it bring to a world under the gods' watchful eyes? The night deepens over the village, its hearths glowing with Prometheus's fire. Their flames acquired defiance against the dark. You stand on the mountainside, Prometheus's silhouette faint against the stars, his chains a reminder of his sacrifice. His myth, as Aeschylus tells it, reaches its climax not in triumph but in enduring consequence. A spark that lit human progress but bound its giver to eternal pain. In the Bronze Age world, where villagers toiled with clay and bronze, Prometheus's fire became a symbol of resilience, its light a fragile hope in a life shadowed by divine wrath. Fire reshaped the village's rhythm. You can envision families gathered around hearths, their faces warmed, their meals cooked, their bronze tools gleaming. Archaeological evidence from Mycenae's melted blades. Fired pottery shows fire's gifts, stronger weapons, preserved food, thriving crafts. Yet, Zeus's punishment lingered, storms ravaged fields, as seen in waterlogged ruins and hunger Nordic granaries. Villagers, offering clay doves to Demeter, wove Prometheus's story into their own, seeing him not as a god but as a kin who suffered for their gain. His fire, kindled in every home, was a shared legacy, its warmth a testament to his defiance. Prometheus's suffering, chained to the rock, was a mirror of mortal toil. His pain, like their labor in rocky fields or at looms, was a price for progress. You can picture him, unbowed, his eyes on the village fires, knowing his spark gave mortals tools to rival the gods. The Bronze Age Greeks, whose lives are seen in loom weights and amphory from Demene, honored him in whispers, their altars heavy with offerings to Hephaestus, the forge god who echoed Prometheus's craft. Fire was their defiance too, each flame, a choice to push forward despite divine anger or natural hardship. The legacy of Prometheus endures beyond his chains. His fire, a stolen spark, lit the path to human ingenuity. Bronze swords, baked clay, warm hearths transforming a world of cold and dark. Today, we see his echo in every act of innovation, from technology to art, where defiance of limits drives progress but risks consequence. His story, rooted in the hearths and fields of a Bronze Age village, reminds us that gifts of creation come with burdens, their flames as fragile as the clay that holds them. As you step from the mountainside, the village fires fading below, reflect on Prometheus's sacrifice. His spark, born of pity and rebellion, asks what we risk for progress and how we bear the costs of our defiance. What fires do we kindle in our own world? And how do we tend their flames when the gods or fate turn against us? Oedipus's riddle, the curse of knowledge in Thebes, step into the shadowed streets of Thebes, where the scent of olive oil lamps and dust lingers, and the murmurs of a plagued city echo through stone walls. This is the world of Oedipus, the king, whose unraveling fate, as told in Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, is a tale of knowledge's bitter cost. His story, set against a Bronze Age Greece where oracles and curses shaped lives, is not one of triumph but of truth's crushing weight. Oedipus's journey, from solving the Sphinx's riddle to facing his own cursed lineage, mirrors the struggles of a people who sought answers in a world ruled by divine mysteries. Oedipus, raised in Corinth as the son of King Polybus, arrived in Thebes as a wanderer, his past unknown. The city was gripped by a plague, its people farmers, weavers, priests dying in droves, their altars piled with clay offerings to Apollo. Archaeological finds from Thebes, like clay tablets and bronze pins, reveal a society under strain, its survival tied to divine favor. The Sphinx, a creature with a lion's body and human face, terrorized the city, demanding answers to her riddle. What walks on for legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Oedipus, sharp-witted, answered man. Freeing Thebes and claiming its throne, widowed by King Laius' death, his triumph was fleeting. Thebes' plague persisted, and the oracle at Delphi declared that Laius' murderer must be found. You can picture Oedipus in the palace, his hands gripping a cedar staff, questioning priests and shepherds, unaware that he himself was the killer. Having slain Laius years before at a crossroads, the truth, buried in his origins, was a curse. Oedipus, abandoned at birth by Laius and Jocasta to thwart a prophecy, was their son, fated to kill his father and marry his mother. In Thebes, families offer clay figurines to avert such fates, their lives shaped by oracles as real as the droughts that parched their fields. Oedipus's quest for truth was relentless, driven by a need to save his city. You can imagine him, pacing the agora where merchants bartered oil and wool, their whispers hinting at secrets. Excavations at Mycenae reveal such cities' stone walls, clay jars where knowledge was both power and peril. Oedipus, hailed as a savior, stood at the edge of a revelation that would undo him, his intelligence a double-edged blade in a world where gods guarded truth jealously. As you stand in Thebes' dusty streets, watching Oedipus seek answers, you wonder, what drove him to unravel the truth at such cost, and how did his knowledge, a spark of human wit, clash with the divine curse that shadowed his life? Thebes' streets grow quieter, the plagues weight heavy in the air as you stand in the palace, watching Oedipus question a trembling shepherd. His relentless search for truth, as Sophocles' Oedipus Rex unfolds, is a tale of human wit pitted against divine fate, set in a Bronze Age world where oracles held sway. Oedipus's pursuit, driven by duty to save Thebes, unravels a curse, woven into his birth, its threads binding him to a past he cannot escape. In a city of farmers and weavers, his quest mirrors their own struggle to find meaning amid divine caprice. Oedipus's questions cut deeper, each answer a step toward ruin. You can picture him, eyes fierce, pressing the shepherd about a child, abandoned on Mount Cithaeron, unaware it was himself, left to die by Laius and Jocasta to defy the oracle's prophecy. Thebes' people, toiling in fields or at looms, knew such fierce prophecies shaped their lives, as seen in clay tablets from Pylos recording offerings to Apollo. Archaeological finds, like bronze pins in graves, show a world where mortals sought to appease gods, their altars heavy with clay doves to ward off curses. Oedipus's intelligence, once his strength against the Sphinx, now turned inward, a blade cutting toward his own identity. Jocasta, his wife and mother, urged him to stop, her voice trembling with dread. You can imagine her in the palace, weaving linen like the women of Thebes, her hands mirroring their labor as seen in loom weights from Mycenae. Her warnings, born of love and fear, echoed the villagers' own caution questioning oracles risked. Divine wrath, like storms that ruined crops or plagues that emptied homes. Yet Oedipus pressed on, driven by a need to end the plague. His questions a mirror of the Bronze Age quest for answers. Why fields failed? Why children died? His pursuit was not pride but duty, a king's burden to protect his people. The city waited, its agora hushed, merchants and shepherds whispering of Oedipus's search. Their lives, tied to clay jars of oil and woolen cloaks, were as fragile as his fate. the oracle's truth, that Oedipus was Laius's killer and Iocasta's son, loomed like a shadow over Thebes, its weight felt in every hearth where families prayed for deliverance. Oedipus's unraveling was their own a reminder that knowledge, like the bronze tools they forged, could build or destroy daughters. You watch Oedipus demand answers, the shepherd's eyes downcast. You sense the truth closing in. His wit, once a savior, now threatens to undo him. What drove him to seek a truth so devastating, and how did his pursuit, rooted in a city's hope, reflect the mortal struggle to know in a world ruled by divine secrets? The palace in Thebes is still, the air thick with dread as Oedipus's truth dawns, his voice breaking under the weight of revelation. Sophocles' Oedipus Rex reaches its tragic climax, not in victory but in ruin as knowledge unmasks Oedipus, as Laius's killer and Iocasta's son, set in a Bronze Age world where oracles and plagues shaped lives. His story is a mirror of human striving, where truth, sought with courage, becomes a curse. In Thebes, where farmers and weavers toiled, Oedipus's fall reflects the fragile balance between seeking answers and enduring their cost. The truth crashes like a storm. Oedipus, abandoned on Cithaeron to escape a prophecy, fulfilled it unwittingly, slaying his father and marrying his mother. You can picture him, eyes wild as Iocasta, realizing the horror, hangs herself in their chamber, her loom silent. Oedipus blinds himself with her bronze pins, a grim echo of the grave goods found in Mycenaean tombs where such pins adorn the dead. Thebes' people, reeling from the plague, learned of their king's fate, their altars heavy with clay offerings to Apollo as seen in Pylos' ruins. His fall was their own a warning that truth, like the bronze blades they forged, could cut both ways. In the Agora, life persisted, though shadowed. Villagers ground barley, wove wool, their hands steady despite grief. As shown by loom weights and clay jars from Mycenae, they whispered Oedipus's tale, not with scorn but pity, seeing him as a man who dared to know. Their lives, shaped by oracles and offerings, echoed his struggle, each prayer, each ploughed field, a gamble against divine will. Oedipus, exiled and blind, wandered from Thebes. His daughters Antigone and Ismene, his only guides, their steps a faint hope in a world where knowledge brought ruin. The city, freed from the plague, bore his loss, its hearths burning with cautious prayers. Oedipus's legacy is not his fall, but the courage to seek truth, his riddle-solving wit. Once Thebes' salvation became its tragedy, yet it mirrors the human drive to understand, as vital as the clay and bronze that sustained Bronze Age life. Today, we see his echo in every quest for knowledge, science, justice, self where answers come at a cost. His story, rooted in Thebes' dusty streets, reminds us that truth is a double-edged sword, its edge sharpest when turned inward. As you step from the palace, Thebes' walls fading in the dusk reflect on Oedipus's journey. His pursuit, woven through a city's hopes and fears, asks what we risk to know ourselves and how we bear the truths that break us. What riddles do we solve, and what curses do we carry in their answers? Antigone's defiance, duty and death in a fractured Thebes. Envision yourself in the war-torn streets of Thebes, where the air carries the acrid scent of smoke and the wails of mourners pierce the dawn. This is the world of Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus, whose unyielding loyalty to family and divine law, as told in Sophocles' Antigone, is a tale of defiance against mortal power, set in a Bronze Age Greece where kinship and ritual bound communities. Her story is not one of victory but of sacrifice, reflecting the struggles of a people caught between human decrees and divine will. Antigone's stand, rooted in the dust of Thebes, challenges the cost of duty in a fractured city. Thebes, reeling from civil war, lay under Creon's rule, Oedipus's successor. His edict forbade burial for Polonices, Antigone's brother, branded a traitor for attacking the city. Burial was sacred, as seen in Mycenaean graves with clay offerings and bronze pins, a right to honor the dead and appease the gods. Antigone, young but resolute, defied Creon, determined to bury Polonices, her duty to family outweighing fear of death. You can picture her in the twilight, scattering dust over her brother's body, her hands mirroring the women of Thebes who prepared graves. their altars heavy with clay doves for Hades. Creon's law was absolute, his power rooted in the Bronze Age need for order after chaos. Thebes' people, farmers, weavers, merchants, lived in its shadow, their lives etched in loom weights and clay jars from Pylos, where survival meant obedience to kings and gods. Antigone's defiance was a spark, a challenge to Creon's decree that echoed the villagers' own quiet resistance, offering secret prayers to Persephone for unburied kin. Her sister, Ismene, urged caution, her fear a mirror of the cities, where dissent risked exile or death. Antigone's act was no mere rebellion, but a claim to divine law. Over human rule, you can imagine her in Thebes' agora, her voice steady. As she faced Creon's guards, her resolve as firm as the bronze tools that shaped the city's walls. Thebes, scarred by war, watched her stand, its people whispering of her courage around hearths, their lives tied to the same rituals she upheld. Her defiance, like the clay figurines left at altars, was a plea for balance in a world where mortal and divine clashed. As you stand in Thebes' dusty streets, watching Antigone scatter earth over Polyneices, you wonder, what drove her to defy Creon at such cost, and how did her loyalty, rooted in the rituals of a Bronze Age world, challenge the fragile order of a city on the edge? Thebes' walls loom heavy with grief, the air thick with dust as you stand in the agora, watching Antigone face Creon's wrath. Her defiance, as Sophocles as Antigone unfolds, is a clash of duty against power, set in a Bronze Age world where divine law and mortal rule collided. Antigone's choice to bury Polyneices, her traitor brother, challenges Creon's edict. Her resolve a spark in a city scarred by war. Her act, rooted in the sacred rites of Thebes' people, mirrors their struggle to honor the dead amid a world where survival demanded obedience. Antigone stands unbowed before Creon, her voice steady as she defends her act. You can picture her, eyes fierce, arguing that divine law burial for kin outranks his decree. In Thebes, burial was life's final rite, as seen in Mycenaean graves with clay vessels and bronze pins, ensuring passage to Hades. Her defiance echoes the quiet resistance of Thebes' women who wove wool and offered clay doves to Persephone, their hands steady despite fear of punishment. Creon, rigid in his rule, sees her act as treason, his authority rooted in the Bronze Age need for order, where kings are seen in Pylos' clay tablets. Enforced control to rebuild war-torn cities, the city watches, its people torn. Farmers grinding barley, merchants trading oil, whisper of Antigone's courage, their lives shaped by the same rituals she upholds. Excavations at Thebes reveal their world-clay altars, loom weights where divine favor was sought to avert. Famine or plague, Ismene, Antigone's sister, pleads for caution, her fear reflecting the villager's own, who knew defiance could bring exile or death. Yet Antigone's loyalty to Polyneices, a brother left to rot, is a duty as vital as the hearths that warmed Thebes' homes, their fires lit with offerings to the gods. Creon's sentence is harsh. Antigone is to be entombed alive, a punishment, as cruel as the unburied dead she sought to honor. You can imagine her led to the cave, her steps firm, her resolve a mirror of the Bronze Age resilience that rebuilt walls after quakes or replanted fields after floods. Thebes' people, bound by fear and ritual, feel her act's weight. Their prayers to Hades a plea for balance in a world where mortal law clashed with divine will. Antigone's defiance, like the clay figurines left at altars, is a stand for what endures beyond power. As you watch Antigone face her fate, Creon's guards closing in, you sense the cost of her stand. Her loyalty to divine law challenges a city's fragile order. What drove her to risk death for a brother's burial, and how did her defiance, woven through Thebes' rituals, reflect the mortal struggle to honor duty in a world ruled by fear? Thebes lies hushed, its streets dim as Antigone is led to her tomb, the stone sealing her fate with a hollow thud. Sophocles as Antigone reaches its tragic climax, not in triumph but in sacrifice. Her defiance of Creon's edict, a spark that burns through a Bronze Age world where duty and power clashed. Her choice to bury Polyneices, honoring divine law over mortal rule, brings ruin but also revelation. reflecting the resilience of a people who toiled under the god's gaze. In Thebes, her stand, rooted in sacred rites, asks what price we pay. For loyalty, Antigone's entombment is a grim mirror of the unburied dead she sought to honor. You can picture her in the cave, her breath fading, her resolve unbroken even as Creon's decree claims her life. Thebes' people, reeling from war, feel her loss, their altars heavy with clay doves for Hades, as seen in Mycenaean graves with bronze pins and clay vessels. Creon's son Haemon, her betrothed, pleads for her life. His love a faint hope crushed by his father's rigidity. His suicide, followed by his mother Eurydice's, compounds the tragedy. Their deaths a ripple of Antigone's defiance as real. To Thebes as the famines or plagues that scar their fields, life in Thebes persists. Though shadowed, farmers plough rocky soil, weavers thread looms, their hands steady despite grief. As shown by clay jars and loom weights from Pylos, they whisper Antigone's story around hearths, not with blame but awe, seeing her as one who dared to uphold divine law. Their lives, shaped by rituals and offerings, echo her struggle, each prayer to Persephone, each burial rite, a stand against chaos. Creon, broken by loss, learns to late the cost of his decree, his rule crumbling like the waterlogged ruins of Mycenae, where mortal power bowed to divine will. Antigone's legacy is not her death but her unyielding duty. Her act, like the clay figurines left at altars, was a claim to what endures family ritual. Divine law over fleeting mortal power. Today, we see her echo in every stand against unjust rule, where courage defies consequence, as vital as the bronze tools that shaped Thebes' walls. Her story, woven through a city's grief and resilience, reminds us that duty, like a grave's dust, binds us to something greater than ourselves. As you step from Thebes' silent streets, the tomb's shadow lingering, reflect on Antigone's sacrifice. Her defiance, rooted in the rituals of a Bronze Age world, asks what we risk for loyalty and how we honor those we love in a world fractured by power. What duties drive us to defy, and what tombs do we face for the sake of divine awe? Human bonds?